Good morning, Mr. Clerk. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Speaker, we have quorum.
I call this meeting of City Council for April 25th to order and acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. We'll now have the opening prayer. Please rise if you're able, and we'll hear from Councillor Evan Duncan.
Gracious and loving Creator, as we gather once again in these chambers, we come with open hearts and minds ready to serve the people of our beloved city. We acknowledge the diverse needs and aspirations of our constituents, recognizing that each voice brings a unique perspective to the table. In this moment, we lift up in remembrance of the life of Preston Heimbinger, a dedicated firefighter who served our community with courage and selflessness. May his memory remind us of the importance of caring for one another, especially in the time of struggle and despair. Grant us the wisdom to prioritize mental health supports for those who serve our city, ensuring that no one suffers alone. As we deliberate on matters of policy and governance, may we be guided by the spirit of unity and cooperation. Help us to set aside our differences and work together towards a common good, knowing that our strength lies in the ability to listen, understand, and empathize with one another. Bless each member of this council with discernment and compassion, that we may lead with integrity and humility. May our decisions reflect a commitment of justice, equity, and inclusion, uplifting every member and every corner of our city, leaving no one behind. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Rawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Eadie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Rollins, Santos, and Schreier.
We have a leave of absence motion moved by Councillor Sharma, seconded by Deputy Speaker Councillor Eadie, that Councillor Orlikow will be away due to city business. Madam Clerk, will you read that into the record, please?
Moved by Councillor Sharma, seconded by Councillor Eadie, that Councillor Orlikow be granted a leave of absence from today's meeting due to city-related business.
We have 2 pages here to serve council today. Please welcome Salem Mellick from Dakota Collegiate, who resides in the Fort Rouge East Fort Garry ward, and Taylor Moore from Collège Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who resides in the Transcona ward. Welcome. Thank you. Councillor Eadie?
Call the question on the leave for city business for Councillor Orlikow?
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? That's carried. Move into morning announcements. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too want to echo welcome to our pages. Good to see you both today. Thank you for serving council. I do want to begin today, Madam Speaker, by, on behalf of all councillors, expressing our sincere condolences to the firefighter community and especially to the widow and family of Preston Heimbinger for their profound loss. I want to thank Councillor Duncan for including the remembrance of the Heimbinger family in his opening prayer this morning. I appreciate the focus of this council, and I've heard from many councillors about their commitment to working to reduce the stigma around mental health issues and to address the need for mental health supports for first responders who serve on the front lines. I want to thank the provincial government, Premier Canoe, and his cabinet and government who have recently committed funding for more councillors to work with fire, paramedic, and police as they serve our frontline people, residents of Winnipeg. The city has also been making investments in counseling, peer-to-peer support programs, and facility design to address mental health challenges that are faced by our staff. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. Help is available. And I know from Acting Chief Jay Shaw of the Fire Paramedic Service that more and more of our staff are accessing the mental health supports and even at times workers' compensation. We want our men and women who serve us to be healthy, and so that's why those supports are in place. Again, I reiterate, if you or anyone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. We also want to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of political commentator and former City Councillor Bill Neville. Bill served as a City Councillor for Tuxedo through the late 1970s and 80s. My condolences, our condolences to his family and friends, and I know, Madam Speaker, in a moment there's a motion coming forward on that. Our city has received some awards lately. I want to take a moment to congratulate our staff. Our Office of Public Engagement team won a Communicator of the Year award from the Canadian Public Relations Society, Manitoba chapter. The team was recognized for its work on the Lord Roberts Community Traffic Study. City of Winnipeg also recently took home 2 awards for the 2024 HR Excellence Awards, winning both the Impact Award and the Vitality Award. Congratulations to our HR team and all of the finalists. Recently, I had the opportunity to travel to Ottawa to see a performance of our Royal Winnipeg Ballet as they performed Snow White in Ottawa to 3 sold-out shows at the National Arts Centre. It was my second time seeing the show and absolutely was once again outstanding. We can be and are very proud of our arts community and especially the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, who are certainly renowned across Canada and in fact throughout the world. The RWB dancers and staff involved in the show are not only ambassadors for dance, but for our city as well, our province and our country. And during my time in Ottawa, I had the opportunity to meet with, among others, the Mayor of Ottawa, once again promoting the RWB and talking about issues related that we share that are similar issues in our cities. Also met with folks from the Canadian Arts Council, and they'll be in Winnipeg soon. And again, it's great to be ambassadors for our city and for the RWB. I want to extend my best wishes to the RWB for their upcoming performances of Carmina Burana and the world premiere of Tell the Wild Man of the Woods, which begins tonight at the Concert Hall and is on until Sunday. Congratulations also to Manitoba Opera, who just completed a very successful run of their most recent performance as well. And the Winnipeg Jets, finally, to our Jets, best of luck to the Jets in their playoff run. I was pleased to be able to bring greetings on behalf of the city at the Winnipeg Whiteout Street Party on Sunday. It might have been the shortest speech of my 10-year political career. It was that we want to win the Cup, and Winnipeg Jets fans are the best fans in the NHL, and then started the chant of "Go Jets Go" and turned the mic over to someone else. But there's just such a fantastic energy, and the crowds downtown on Sunday and Tuesday, and certainly from either our homes or restaurants or lounges, wherever we're going to be meeting the game, watching the game tomorrow, we'll be cheering on our Jets in Game 3 of this series. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you also installed a very important sign, Whiteout Way. It was great to see you up there on the bucket.
Thank you. I did, Madam Speaker, thank you for noting that. Just a kind of a humorous moment. Our city staff was there. They were generous, and there was a staff member down below, and I was in the bucket, and I was tightening it. He goes, "That's okay, Mr. Mayor." He called up. He said, "Don't worry, we're going to get up and fix it after you're done," and they literally did. So thanks to our good staff.
Thank you. Lovely. Next is Councillor Schreier, followed by Councillor Duncan, and finally Councillor Rollins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last night was the annual spring cleanup of the Northeast Pioneer Greenway for the Beavers, Cubs, Scouts, and Venturers of the area, including Valley Gardens and John DeGraff section. And last night I was invited by Daryl Adair, the former Akela of the John DeGraff Cub Scouts, and I was there once again with my son Jared. And I just want to thank all those involved over the years, that are community leaders, and those involved throughout the years and decades of keeping our city clean. Madam Speaker, it happens to be, and I'm going to read my speech this time, which is rare for me, but today marks the 50th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution in Portugal. Happens to be right today, and which brought an end to the longest fascist dictatorship in Europe. Hoje assinala-se o cinquentenário da Revolução dos Cravos em Portugal. No espaço de uma noite e de dia, a Revolução, ainda não conhecida como Revolução dos Cravos, deve assumir as flores distribuídas aos soldados por comerciante lisboeta, que depois as colocou nos canos das suas espingardas. Estava prestes a mudar a vida do povo português. Gostaria de agradecer o contributo do povo de Portugal, incluindo dos Açores, para o Canadá, Manitoba e Winnipeg, incluindo a nosso querido chefe secretário Carlos Gameiro. Obrigado a todos. Obrigado, Senhor Presidente. Obrigado, Carlos. Obrigado.
Thank you, Councillor Schreier. Next is Councillor Duncan and Councillor Rowlands. 1 minute for morning announcements. Thank you.
I apologize, this will only be in English today here. As we were celebrating the end of the hockey season, March 21st through 24th, Winnipeg hosted the final Speedos Western Canadian Championship at the Pan Am Pool. The competition was national level competition organized by Swim Canada and a major support from Swim Manitoba. The event was live streamed across the country, and many sponsors were acknowledged, including the City of Winnipeg. Winnipeg was a host to many swimmers, including Olympic swimmers from BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and of course our home province of Manitoba. I wanted to extend a congratulations to all of the 39 swimmers from Manitoba on behalf of the City Council of Winnipeg. Congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Congratulations. Next is Councillor Rowlands, and final speaker, Councillor Mays.
Thank you very much. I was honored to represent Council, Madam Speaker, at the Human Resource Excellence Awards earlier this month. I want to underline that the public service had many great projects that they could have forwarded, and I want to note too that the great projects that they did forward, whether it was were indicative of all the departments working together, whether it was Community Development, Indigenous Relations Division, Community Services, and HR Services, along with Public Works on a pilot, or for newcomer youth that we know resulted in people being employed at the City of Winnipeg, whether it was the Awareness and Action Series provided insights in trauma-informed harm reduction, decolonization with a variety of departments, or whether it was the prize, and they took home two that night, of the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, who created the Behavioral Health Unit with Fire Paramedic Field, representing a significant and progressive step forward in addressing mental health concerns in the service, one in which this council last term was proud to invest in. And we continue. So I wanted to give my sincere congratulations to all those that were recognized through their work, and including the winners, Madam Speaker. I also stand to recognize Lesbian Visibility Week that takes place this week, to celebrate the power of sisterhood, uplifting women, non-binary people everywhere from every generation, and I look forward to celebrating tonight with community at the Good Neighbor Brewing Company, Madam Speaker, if we get through council in a timely way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Mays.
I hadn't meant to speak, but the discussion of mental health services just makes me want to note the partnership we've had for several years now with the Manitoba School Boards Association and Canadian Mental Health Association, the Mark Dickoff Award that we fund every year, well, my office funds every year, for students both inside Winnipeg and outside Winnipeg who further work on mental health. That solicitation for nominees just went out yesterday from the School Boards Association. So hopefully we'll get lots of good applicants. Our own Janine Stotsky, her daughter, had a terrific portfolio on this some years ago. It's quite moving, actually, to go through these proposals. So Mark Dickoff Memorial Award, funded by the city, coming through again this year. Secondly, if only I'd had Councillor Schreier with me when I ran for City Council 30 years ago in Toronto with that Portuguese knowledge. That would have helped, but all I can remember is, O Povo Unidos Jamais Será Vencido, is all I can remember from that campaign. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mays. Next, we have a condolence motion for former Councillor William Bill Neville. Madam Clerk, will you please read it into the record?
Moved by Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor Dobson, that Council place on record its profound sorrow at the death of former Councillor William Bill Neville, which occurred on March 29, 2024. Mr. Neville served as a councillor in the Tuxedo Heights Ward, Assiniboine Park, Fort Garry community from December 4th, 1979 to October 1989. This council extends to his family its deepest sympathy and condolences in their bereavement.
Please rise for a moment of silence if you are able. Councillor Chambers, will you move that the minutes of the meetings held on March 20th and 21st, 2024 be taken as read and confirmed?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. We have two delegations registered to speak virtually. Our first is Jamil Mahmood, Executive Director of the Main Street Project, and Tessa Blakey Whitecloud, Chief Executive Officer of Shalom Mission, in support of item 2 of the report of the Standing Policy Committee, of the report of the Executive Policy Committee, dated April 16th, 2024. It's regarding garbage cleanup at encampments. Madam Clerk, we have the delegations with us. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate the time here at Council. We want to thank EPC and folks, Mayor and Council, for considering this motion and looking forward to finding creative solutions to challenges we face in our community. We're very excited. I do want to start off by stressing that this is a pilot and also like a temporary step for the broader solution, which is housing. We know that the only way to address these broad social challenges are to build the housing we need and the right kind of housing for people. That once we have that housing, we can definitely do a lot more to reduce the number of encampments and the need for people to access riverbanks as places of safety and housing. So really want to stress that. I do also want to stress that we appreciate the city taking a human rights-based approach to those living unsheltered and those using encampments. That's really important. And as part of our presentation, we did attach the federal report on the upholding the dignity and human rights, the federal advocates' review of homelessness encampments as an attachment to this. And we think Winnipeg is doing a better job than most other jurisdictions at maintaining this, and mostly due to the previous planning and partnership done between the city and community around the Kikanauma strategy to really make sure that human rights and dignity was upheld in all of this. We really applaud Council for their continued commitment to upholding human rights. We know we're not perfect yet, and we're not at the point where we are doing this fully, but we think this report from the federal advocates gives us a good base for future conversations. We're really excited to engage with Council and the city on broader ways to do that in a great way. Specifically on this encampment, we really want to thank everybody for considering our proposal, and I think this project does a number of things that make sure we can provide solutions to neighborhoods for response to garbage pileup and bulky waste in the neighborhood in a way that also respects those living in encampments and provides that support and dignity. We also, as I mentioned earlier, the maintaining of the Kikanauma strategy that we developed in collaboration with community and the city. And finally, I think the other big things it does is it builds capacity in our city, not only within the Public Works Department to respond better, but also for community and our agencies to be able to provide better response to the needs of both the encampment residents and community members who are concerned about garbage in encampments as well. And then just a little bit on the pilot. I know you've all seen the document, but just the two phases of the pilot. One is the regular weekly collection at kind of main locations to provide that opportunity to provide regular collection allows, the the dignity we provide to every resident of our city, that regular collection to move out garbage from the area, and then building the capacity to have more bulky waste cleanups. I know in EPC there were some questions about would it be available throughout the whole city. Like, we would love to respond anywhere. So if councillors outside of kind of core areas or the main encampment area have bulky waste that needs to be picked up and collected, or mindful cleanups and encampments, we're always happy to work on those solutions between the capacity being built with this proposed pilot, and also the capacity built within Public Works to respond collectively, and then our outreach services to be able to provide that intermediary for those cleanups and relationship built with community members. So I'll pause there and let Tessa talk a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think one of the core things with this project is that we all know that the actual solution, as Jamil already mentioned, is housing and having adequate housing. But in the absence of that, this encampment cleanup project is really important, because it offers people that dignity and respect and compassion that the city has named it wants to be able to offer folks that are living in an unsheltered environment. Also, by the use of Clean Slate with DCSP and the MOST team at Silo Mission, we are actually solving some of the causes of homelessness for other folks, including maybe folks staying in encampments, through those processes, by ensuring opportunities to barrier-free employment for people who have been experiencing homelessness. So while this is going to create a safer, cleaner, more beautiful environment, take better care of the forests in which many of these encampments are in, it's also going to provide an opportunity for dignified employment that then people can move on and graduate to other employment. And we've had actually a lot of graduations in the last couple of weeks from our MOST team into full-time employment in other areas. So we know that this is a model that tackles both sides of the issue in terms of what are the symptoms of homelessness and what are the causes of homelessness. While I understand that ideally we'd like to see those investments in housing, the amount of money needed for this pilot project to offer that dignity and that safety and more beautiful forests and parks for the general public to witness, the amount of money we need for this particular project would only probably construct about 1 unit of housing. And so, while that needs to be our focus with the Housing Accelerator Fund to build housing that specifically matches the needs of the community that experiences homelessness and serves those that are having the most struggle to access housing, a project like this is not taking away from that, and instead is meeting people where they're at today, working with the resources we have available today, as we continue in the long term to address the housing stock shortage of social housing supply in Winnipeg that continues to push people into homelessness. So we're really excited to be working in partnership with Main Street Project, with DCSP, with other outreach teams, coordinating and making sure that we're collaborating to meet people experiencing homelessness, living in an unsheltered encampment environment in the best way possible to meet this need. Last year, I had the opportunity to be foreperson on day 3 of the cleanup, and it was a beautiful experience. So we had so many people that were just thrilled that we were there, so excited to have this opportunity to have their space cleaned up, really worked collaboratively with us. When we got to the last encampment, they'd done all of the work themselves. They had 28 garbage bags ready for us. So there is a big desire for the dignity and cleanliness that this project is going to bring to people. And I hope that council sees, in their hearts and in their minds, the need for this and supports it today.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Schreier, followed by Councillor Eadie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for our delegates this morning. I live 30 seconds on foot, and my wife and I raised our family 30 seconds on foot from a local encampment, and on 5 minutes on foot from a couple of others. We're sooner or later involved with the cleanup, including with my local foot patrol. Depending on the type of encampment, I'm fascinated by how some of these encampments they're so clean, they're well organized already by the people that live there. Depending on the sort of the type of setup, and I've always been amazed by how clean some of these encampments are kept. And I want to know, as Tessa talks about dignity and respect, some of those people actually utilize that when it comes to maintaining their own encampments. I want to know if there's talk about including the people that live in the encampments and being involved in the process of the cleanup, and if they could talk about that.
Yeah. Jamil, do you want to jump on that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, I could just say definitely all the cleanups we do involve the residents that are living there. You know, our outreach teams are going in to most encampments at least once a day, if not 3 times a day between different shifts, 24 hours a day. So we're always going with garbage bags, getting supplies folks need and stuff like that. This just allows to do that on a bigger scale. And so, yeah, the residents will be involved fully. They'll be consulted in how it works and make sure that they're kind of leading the process that we use as we do the cleanups.
And I'll just add, we couldn't do this without the relationships that Main Street Project's outreach team has already established with folks living in encampments. It's crucial to the success of the project. So our experience last year as the mindful encampment cleanup, kind of doing the massive clean at the beginning of the season, this year, hopefully, with support of this motion, we go in with Main Street Project. Main Street Project says, hey, here's your lead at this encampment. They're excited to have you and have agreed to work with you. And then that person helps indicate to us what needs to be taken away and what is, you know, continuing to be useful for the folks living in encampments. They work alongside us in the cleanup and help us understand, you know, where to take proper action and really feel valued and seen in their relationship with Main Street Project's outreach team. And then we get to join in on that triangle of trust as another service provider to be able to support that encampment process. So it's a really dignified approach thanks to the outreach team at MSP.
And Madam Speaker, I just want to thank Jamil and Tessa for all their work and the people they work with. Thank you, miigwech.
Thank you. Councillor Edie?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to the work and appreciation of humanity by your organizations. I note, I mean, the amount of money, I think, was a big concern to the Executive Policy Committee, but I just want to determine, so this will be a pilot. I just wanted to know, it didn't actually say, it refers to the downtown safety group or whatever as well. This pilot, are you operating this within the so-called downtown and South Point Douglas area? Or going beyond?
So there's 2 parts to the pilot. One is to provide a regular weekly collection. That'll probably mostly in the downtown core area where there's larger encampments set up. But the bulky waste and mindful cleanup would be something that'd be available throughout the city wherever the encampments need those kind of bigger cleanups, one-off kind of clean-ups versus a regular weekly collection. So it's both focused on the core area, but also available to anywhere in the city that needs a kind of broader one-off mindful cleanups.
Madam Speaker, I'm wondering if I could get a definition of core area.
You know, we proposed in the pilot 3 main locations, depending on the money that's available and the rollout. It could be expanded to a couple others. We were kind of looking at 3 to 5 locations. We don't have a firm definition. We're kind of willing to work with the city and where the encampments are to define that weekly collection and what the best locations are for that. We have, based on our kind of outreach work and where we know the bigger encampments are, that list, but very open. And as it is a pilot, we want to make sure we're kind of setting it up to be successful and in the right places. So we're very flexible, I think, in terms of the rollout and what that looks like, and happy to work with council and city on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Seeing none, we appreciate your delegation today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have David Grant in opposition to item 3 of the report of the Executive Policy Committee dated April 16th, 2024 regarding bylaw enforcement consolidation. Item 6, report of the Executive Policy Committee dated April 16th regarding land dedication reserve fund for the United Church in Meadowood for a geothermal project. Item 3, report of the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services dated March 6th regarding the proactive cleanup of needle debris and weapons in city parks. Mr. Grant, welcome.
Thank you. I feel that I should preface these remarks. I do not believe that I should be considered an enemy. I strongly believe in your role here. I have been a volunteer on election campaigns since the 1960s. I played a small but key role in Ontario's 1967 general election. It was front page news. I've served on countless boards, elected boards, and on corporate decision-making teams. The information supplied to you before you decide sometimes compares poorly with what was typical for those corporate teams. When I see that the narrative provided to councillors is biased or incomplete, I become motivated to help. In other organizations, their governance committees would act to improve processes and, more importantly, the quality of the information provided for decision-making. And I know you have a very active decision-making team. Depending on the occasional delegation to bring up important inputs is far from optimal. On EPC number 3, imagine giving the power to enforce 700 bylaws to the kind-hearted, forgiving folks at the Parking Authority. At first glance, handing all bylaw enforcement to the WPA is likely to reap new levels of profit. There are several problems with this. Number 1, the WPA's focus on maximizing fine income while increasing its own costs and neglecting service stand in stark contrast to what voters expect. Folks want service far more than they want the WPA empire to grow. By not providing a pay station within sight of every block of spaces, fine income goes up as those seeking to pay wander the streets. It saves money on not providing working pay stations. So there's a little bit of a savings there. Unfortunately, this drives business away from the streets that are under WPA jurisdiction among the demographic that doesn't have the app on their phone or a phone. Topic 2, the WPA decision to punish residents near 1 and 2 hour parking zones if they have more than one car. This is another example of bad customer service. Item number 3, there are many bylaws which are archaic and others which are not serving their original purpose. Council has long been asked to correct or withdraw those. Those are the reports that I've seen suggest that no such action has begun. For example, does the city have a comprehensive list of, quotes, noxious weeds? Are all wildflowers on this list? Will city departments with weedy land be granted exemptions, like WPS grants speeding ticket exemptions to a long list of vehicles? Problem number 4, my residents association still has concerns with rooming houses. The bylaws that we were told would solve the problem do nothing, although they do put family dinners, Sunday dinners at risk of ticketing if the driveway has more than 3 cars in a row. Our association expects to have recommendations to offer soon. Will Council consider fixing these problems by fixing those bylaws? Problem number 5, your Our Winnipeg and other guides oppose your bylaws. You say that the city depends on pollinators, but complying with some bylaws is very bad for those little bees and pollinators. Watering a lawn and cutting it frequently wastes fuel and water, but that's what your old bylaws seem to demand. Before telling WPA to grow to be able to fine every time a front lawn is in violation, please update the worst bylaws to allow new green practices. On EPC topic 6, giving city tax dollars to a church for a new heating system violates city rules. Your staff made this clear. That this rule violation has moved up 4 levels at City Hall, and councillors have yet to, quotes, just say no, quotes, makes a mockery of the city's best practice rules. Efficiency Manitoba has promised to help this group buy a new furnace. There is no need for city to, quote, swerve out of its lane in this way. The report being used to sell this idea is missing a lot of information. How much will the whole job cost? What are the consequences of the UCIM paying what in Efficiency Manitoba does not? In all the years that I served on the board of other United Church congregations, we funded all our own projects. We never asked city ratepayers to buy us stuff. Have the proponents obtained the position letter from the Integrity Commissioner for this or any other plan to spend taxpayer funds in an unusual way to benefit a small to mid-sized group of voters? Just a suggestion that maybe that letter should be in hand. On SPC services number 3, creating a special team of city workers to pick up needles before daycare kids use a park. That seems like an obvious thing, like a win-win there to pick up the needles. Winnipeg is not alone in funding those who enable the injection of dangerous substances in the name of harm reduction. That's why we do it. In other places, the rate of return of the most dangerous apparatus is reported. Where is the data for Winnipeg's rate of return of used needles to those who distribute the new ones? Does the city collect this data? Does anyone even care about return rates? I'm not alone in caring very much about the return process. And I would thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Schreier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank David Grant once again for his insights and perspective. At least half of the time I agree with him, and if not, I still appreciate the insights. In this case, when it comes to item 6 of the Executive Policy Committee regarding the funding of the United Church for a geothermal project, is Mr. Grant putting into question the process or how we use the funds? To me, it seems like a decent use of funding. It's $20,000. Councillors spend a lot more than that on various types of enhancement projects, including for churches, including United Churches too throughout the city. What is it particularly wrong with this, or is he questioning the use of funding for this type of thing in general? And I have to admit, it hasn't always been the case that council was allowed to provide funding for churches. I understand this has only been around for the last dozen years or something like that. But having said that, is that what he's questioning?
I guess early in this process, when this request was at its lower stages in committee, I had pointed out that not far from or in the same ward, we have a parcel of land, which was on the TV news last night, that the city would like to contribute to acquiring. And the fund from which this 20,000 or whatever is being drawn or proposed to be drawn is a fund set up by taxing developers of a subdivision or whatever to provide some park amenities in that space. So it would seem that using that money toward buying the LeMay Forest would be exactly what the money was intended for. The city staff report on this this request said that it does not meet the rules. So that's the primary thing. The other is that it is generally the job of Efficiency Manitoba, which is created by provincial government from the folks at Manitoba Hydro. Manitoba Hydro was in the business of selling more power and making money from it and helping people not use power. And it was recognized that that's a sort of a conflict. So Efficiency Manitoba was created. Its primary job is to go to places like factories and institutions like the UCIM and help them to make things more efficient, lend them money to, or give them money to put in more efficient systems. So help with this heat pump thing is exactly the job of Efficiency Manitoba. And in general, the city government has not had a component of its mandate that is to help institutions within the city to buy stuff, and whether it's a furnace or a new lawn or whatever, a new carpet. And that is the primary thing, is that it was not the right fund to be taking money from, and it is not our job. Efficiency Manitoba has all the expertise to evaluate and offer good advice on this or that. And really, we in the city, or you guys in the city, do not have that expertise to know whether this is the best the best way to do it, et cetera. And so those are the two bases, that it was not the right pocket to take the money from, and it was not something that is really a core part of the city business. So thank you for your question.
No further questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. You have a great day. Appreciate your delegation today.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to the report of the Executive Policy Committee. Mr. Mayor, the report dated March 12th.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I introduce item 3 of the report and move adoption of consent agenda item 3, but I do understand there's an amending motion on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your opportunity to introduce the item, and Councillor Gilroy has an amending motion.
Yeah, I'll wait to hear from Councillor Gilroy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my councillor colleagues for actually laying this matter over, so I had a little bit more time to review the policy document, which is really good. I'm very, very impressed with what the public service has done, and I just want to congratulate them on their for their award-winning team that the mayor spoke about earlier. There's a lot of really good information that was done in this policy, and a lot of great research. So I just want to thank them for them. One change that I really did want to make sure that we are doing, though, is, and I want to thank Councillor Lukes for working with me on this, as we kind of talked about this in the governance meeting, and this kind of came forward, is making sure that prior to any budget that we are really consulting with the communities that we serve, and I think it's critical. We found out that our public service wasn't really involved in the budget consultations this time around. It was the mayor's office, and we really want to make sure that our public service is doing this due diligence and doing this work. We want to make sure that this is that there's a fair process moving forward, and that the public has an opportunity to go a non-biased approach to making sure that we're handling our budget consultations moving forward. And I think this is a really good mechanism to ensure we now have the policy. Now we can make sure that this policy is also dictating some of the work around the budget, which I think is really critical and a really positive step forward. So I do want to thank everybody for the work that they've done on changing the policy. And I hope that my councillor colleagues will look at this as a positive change to make sure that we are engaging pre-budget. We are really engaging with the communities and really getting them to understand. I think it's good for democracy when the community is engaged, and I feel now we have a strong policy in order to do that work. So thank you, Madam Speaker, and I hope my councillor colleagues support the motion moving forward. The amending motion.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Lukes.
Thank you very much. I rise as the seconder of this motion, and also want to thank Councillor Gilroy. She's been very good in bringing forward positive ideas on how to improve the budget consultation process. I think many of you know that I've been involved in multiple budgets, and not directly and indirectly. So I think this is a good adjustment that she's making, putting forward to the policy, and I'm supportive of it. I'm very glad to see that we have a policy on public engagement. This is the first time in 5 years since it was initially set out that we're updating it or reviewing it, and it's important because the public, as much as they they don't really like to come down to City Hall, but it's important that some of them do, I will say. I used to like coming down to City Hall, but not everyone can. And to have the opportunity to go out into the wards and to talk pre-budget, I think is important, because we've all done a lot of work. And I want to commend, even though I didn't vote for it the first time, I've eaten crow on it. I want to commend the mayor for bringing forward at the time when he was councillor the concept of a 4-year budget, because I think it's worked out really well. And now that we're doing this, I think it's important that we have folks understand that we're doing this 4-year budget. We're aligning it with our strategic action plan, and this provides us an opportunity also to go out pre-budget, talk about our strategic action plan, talk about the budget, the 4-year budget, where we are in, what year we're in that cycle, and have some conversations with residents and help them, understand a little more about the budget process. The budget process is really challenging. It is really challenging. So I want to thank Councillor Gilroy for working on this and bringing up her concerns in the Governance Committee. And I want to thank Councillor Barati for also offering to have and take input on again, this last budget process. It's always challenging figuring out how much is too much information, too much consultation, and how to really pull it all together so everyone feels satisfied. But I'm pleased that we're working this into the policy, and I want to thank Councillor Gilroy for her efforts on this.
Thank you, Councillor Lukes. Next is Councillor Wyatt.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support Councillor Gilroy's motion. I guess to put perspective on this, this is light years ahead of where we once were. I remember arriving originally on council and then arriving on EPC, and I think Councillor Clement was the chair of finance, and arguing that there should be public consultations around the budget. I won't say who, but members of the executive committee said, well, we did that, in 1996, and it didn't work. So why would we do it again? There was huge resistance before on council to do any form of public engagement, any form of public consultations. It was not on. And so the idea, constantly recommending myself and other newer members, I remember Mike Packnigan as well was in support of that. It did not occur. And, it was very frustrating, but it's now great to see this, Madam Speaker. I would, though, point out on page 3 of the report that outlines the policy that we might want to consider greater flexibility. I think this is what Councillor Gilroy is speaking to, really, with her motion, because it adds public engagement will be undertaken on projects when there is a legislative requirement for public engagement. 2, public engagement has been specified in the approved capital budget. 3, public engagement has been initiated by a council directive, or 4, public engagement has been directed by Director of Customer Service and Communications. In addition, elected officials may carry out public engagement for multi-year budget review process and for other projects or initiatives. Now, the way I read that statement, or those 4 points, specifically after item number 3, citing the directive or, is that it does not have to be all 4 of those items that are required to be in place to trigger the public engagement process. It could be one of the 3 or a combination thereof, for the very reason that it says or, not and. And so I just cite that for the purpose, Madam Speaker, to inform councillors that I think I've had pushback since elected. I've had an open house last fall on my parks and playgrounds. I wanted to get the Office of Public Engagement involved, and I said, no, this is your open house, councillor. We don't have any directive for this. Well, that's interesting. Based on what I'm reading here, and I was doing it based on capital budgets approved for our parks projects previously by council. So number 2, public engagement has been specified in the approved capital budget. I guess they could argue that it wasn't approved. There has to be greater flexibility, or, well, the number 4 is a catch-all, has been directed by the Director of Customer Service and Communications. So we've delegated a lot of authority to a non-elected official there. And all I would ask is that maybe some consideration be given to that in the future. I don't mind through the CWA. I went through the CWA. I spent the money. I spent the money on all the boards, like 20, 30 boards. I had an open house at East End Community Club. Good attendance from the community, outlining future park playgrounds being done, getting feedback from the public on other ones that are in need. And I had to do it without any kind of support from the Office of the Engagement of Public Engagement, which is kind of unfortunate considering we have this policy now. So those are just my thoughts. I think what you moved, Councillor Gilroy, is wonderful. 100% support. So thank you. And Madam Janice Luke, Councillor Lukes for seconding it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be voting in favor of the amendment. I don't think it really does any harm. I'm not sure how much good it actually does. one is tempted to say DIY, do it yourself, go out and consult with the public. I don't really think we need to be telling the public service to do this. Councillor Brawadi, to his credit, made an offer to go anywhere, have a budget open house. Councillor Rollins had one. I think there was some disconnect with Councillor Brawadi on that. Councillor Brawadi came out to St. Vital. We had a good town hall meeting on the budget. He came out as Councillor Gillingham came when he was finance chair, as Councillor Fielding came when he was finance chair, as Councillor Morantz, and I think Councillor White all had come to St. Vital. So you're certainly always able to do these budget consultations, but I don't think any harm can come of it. I am, however, not going to vote for the main report. I just don't have it in me to sit here and read a report extolling our care about the public and our award-winning this and our award-winning that, and we're so proud of all of this. Here's what the motion says in part. It is council's responsibility to consider the public's views and perspectives when making decisions that affect the city as a whole. Well, I just don't have it in me to vote for this, knowing we have very recently, as a council, 13-3 voted for much expanded as of right way to proceed for development procedures. That was in the half motion. Yes, it was right there. We have some councillors putting out publications saying there'll still be public hearings. No, there won't. We'll come to that. There will be a public hearing. We'll be doing it. It will be maybe in the fall and maybe in early spring. But to have a report that talks about our great enthusiasm and award-winning record for public consultation, the motion on half was that half application be amended to legalize 4 dwelling units per residential unit be permitted as of right citywide. Remember, this motion talks about when things affect the city as a whole, must listen to the public. What else did we say? The half application be amended to legalize 4 units up to 4 stories as of right within 800 meters of high-frequency transit, much of the city there, and that half applications allow for as-of-right development on malls and corridors to facilitate quick approvals. Now, we have some of my colleagues saying, well, there'll still be public hearings. Well, maybe you don't believe me, but look at what the public service had to say. You do want the public service to be doing more consultation with the public. Here's what the public service had to say in the frequently asked question. Elimination of public hearings is inherent to the meaning of as-of-right. Elimination of public hearings is inherent to the meaning of as-of-right. Next sentence. Expanding these as-of-right entitlements would mean hearings would be eliminated. Hard to read that any other way than, yes, we'll be eliminating some public hearings. The mayor was explicit in his campaign document. To his credit, I tend to like people who try to implement their campaign documents. I've said that's what I try and do over great opposition from the public service. And the mayor said that he would ask city staff and council to develop rules permitting residential construction over medium and large retail malls as of right, conditional on setbacks to minimize impacts on nearby residents. So that's what we voted for as a council. There'll be fewer public hearings. Elimination of public hearings is inherent to the meaning of as of right. So I'd like to celebrate our great public outreach, but it just frankly seems to me impossible to square with our approach. Now, we don't always have public hearings. Councillor Reedy very alertly spotted that we had eliminated these hearings we used to have on grading bylaws and sewer issues and backyard grates. Why we needed 4 councillors to hear those for hours at a time, I was never clear on that. Council, to its credit, took that out. I happen to think that there's a difference in scale if you're talking about putting 1,000 or 2,000 units into a mall parking lot. So the mayor was open about it in his platform, so no criticism of the mayor, but let's be open. We are going to eliminate public hearings and the public's right to have the kind of input we're celebrating. There will be one hearing. It will be here. It will be council that makes those decisions about what changes are going to be made to facilitate the half process. So just remind my colleagues, if we're excited, if we're enthusiastic about the award-winning public engagement, let's remember that when the public comes forward or when councillors come forward, especially people like Councillor Dobson, Councillor Orlico, myself, others who've had a lot of these controversial lot-splitting situations in their wards. Let's give some weight to that. We're celebrating the need to have public engagement. At the same time, we will be eliminating public hearings on some very large matters. So what will be left to us? Well, we will be able to define the setbacks, as the mayor's document said. We will be able, as the very well drafted motion from Mr. Kelsey said when we had it in November, we will be able to consider things like what sort of height limits do we want? What sort of lot size limits do we want? What sort of lanes do we want? All of those will be within our consideration. They're not coming back from multiple hearings, despite what some of my colleagues are saying. There will be a public hearing, and thereafter, certain entitlements will be as of right. The devil will be in the details, I suppose, but we do need to put some weight on the concerns of the public. Since we seem to be celebrating that, we do need to put that into the development context as well. So I'll be voting for the amendment. I know Councillor Gilroy has put some time in on this. I don't mean to belittle it. I do, however, don't have it in me to celebrate that we're having an engaged Winnipeg policy. At the same time, we're moving forward to expanding these as-of-right entitlements would mean hearings would be eliminated. So again, not my wording, that's from the public service, so we want to start engaging the public. So we will have a public hearing. It will be in this chamber due to some changes made, I think, by Councillor Wyatt in the half application. And I guess we'll have a chance to debate some of these issues. But let's listen to the public on those issues as well. Again, the mayor was open about it in his platform. I can't fault the mayor. That's what he said. He wanted more as-of-right on shopping centers, and we should be able to land on something like that. And it wasn't the mayor's initiative to bring in 48-foot height limits or 4-story or 4 units everywhere. It wasn't the mayor's initiative, but those are as-of-right entitlements that we are allowing the federal government to dictate. For clarity, the 48-foot height limit applies only to 4plexes. Council was extremely clear on that. Some good drafting there by Mr. Kelsey. So the 48 feet isn't for 6plexes, or you don't need my single-family home to go 48 feet high. That doesn't help with densification at all. So we will come to these. We should listen to the public in those moments just as much as we hope to listen to them in budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eadie?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise. I am in support of Councillor Gilroy's amendment. I believe it is a very important component, Madam Speaker. And I will say in speaking to that, Madam Speaker, in the month of March, I believe, when was that last month we passed the budget? Oh my goodness. Anyway, February? Anyway, March. So, Madam Speaker, in March, we had a weird year this year, and garbage season started earlier. So, to think that the Mynarski office, leading up into the budget and dealing with that, to actually put on one's own consultation, Madam Speaker, is highly unlikely. So, this is why I appreciate the motion that Councillor Gilroy is bringing forward. And actually, even though I worked on the budget working group, Madam Speaker, there were still some things I was unsure about and had to, follow up and make sure to read and make sure what's happening, this and that. And Madam Speaker, what did result, what's really important is, if the public service, who we have empowered through providing enough money to do public engagements, I believe, some may disagree or whatever, Madam Speaker, but there were some, things that would affect the Mynarski ward, the Old Kildonan ward, the Point Douglas ward, and everybody's ward. And it's important to go out in that consultation and talk to them. The example I give, I am having a May 2nd public put on by the Mynarski office, totally staffed by Mynarski, and regarding what to do regarding some properties when wading pools are closed, which council voted on a budget that agreed we had this plan, and that's the plan we're following, Madam Speaker. But really, you have to go and talk to the community, though, what effects are these going to have? So I just wanted to point that out, and that's why I'm wholly in support of Councillor Gilroy's amendment. It's very important. I just wanted to speak to, it was my understanding when we passed the half motion and we agreed with the federal government that we would proceed along, 4 units as a right. But one thing I will point out first, just to make it clear, it's 4 right, and then whatever we amend the zoning, it's a right to 4 depending on meeting some criteria, parameters on a lot, right? So just to say it's a right, maybe the developer will disagree with the parameters that we may set on where do you build 4 units. So we could still have appeal hearings because technically, it's a right, but you have a right to build a duplex right now on an R2.
The item is about public consultation, not about,
All right,
thank
so
you.
public consultation, so, no, because I think, public engagement awards, I may disagree with the councillor speaking on that note, but the councillor speaking on that note, the motion that the city council, while there should be engagement, and that city council as a whole consider the amendments that come out of the half, it's supposed to be council of whole. That was my amending to that particular thing, and I'm concerned in how I see some things coming down the pipe. So community engagement should be happening first, and we won't get into all that development stuff. There's other concerns, but this is an important amendment, and if the amendment passes, I will definitely vote for the report itself. And we got to stay off the sticky issues, I guess, Madam Speaker, when it comes to public engagement, I guess. Anyway, but there has to be public engagement in what I was just talking about. So, Madam Speaker, just clarify things for the public to discuss that issue. Anyway, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm done.
Thank you. Councillor.
For something that was actually Councillor Edie's initiative, so my apologies on that.
Noted. Thank you. Councillor Rollins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to recognize the Indigenous engagement and the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People that are specific updates to this policy. And Madam Speaker, I want to give some acknowledgement to the Indigenous Relations Division that worked on the policy, and then prompt us to think as a council in a bit of a different matter, hopefully. Madam Speaker, embedded in the second paragraph is the acknowledgement that Indigenous peoples are rights holders, and embedded in the new document is the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. What does trouble me a bit is that it is in the context of an engagement policy and not on a second policy and not pointing to any other policy, work that I think we still need to do as a council to understand our rights and obligations as it may flow from the Crown. Now, we are a charter city, so we are unlike other cities in some respects, one could argue, in terms of our legal obligations that some may argue, not me, that they flow from the Crown, i.e. the provincial federal government. But insofar as we're a creature of the provincial government, I'm a little uncomfortable with the language, and I'll give you some examples. In the document, it talks about the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, but it doesn't, and it does talk about Section 35 of the Constitution Act, 1982, but the legal duty to consult is a fundamental difference of engagement, and what flows in the attachments is not falling out of that logic, Madam Speaker. There is proposed Crown conduct. There is proposed conduct that could have adverse impacts on rights holders. There is a potential establishment of rights in the area. And to these things, we say we're going to simply go and have folks collaborate with Indigenous Relations Division. And Madam Speaker, this is a different nut than an engagement. So I'm a little troubled again by the use of Indigenous Relations Division as it pertains to all departments, then going to collaborate. I'm a little troubled by that, Madam Speaker, given the import of our responsibilities. Free, prior, and informed consent arises from the self-determination rights. And that is central, and that falls out of, not UNDRIP, that falls out to social cultural rights, Madam Speaker. So we're in fact a bit pointing at wrong human rights law here, wrong covenants, right? The International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights may be, you know, a bit of a policy nerdy point, Madam Speaker, but it's not. And I'm concerned that there is no mention of free, prior, informed consent in this document. It is a lightly held statement saying, you know, that you know, this is held differently. It is a good step, which is likely up to the last minute while I'll support it. But I want to really make sure that my colleagues know that I don't see it's similar at all, the engagement, that consultation differs. And insofar as this document points to the Section 35 of the Constitution Act, and insofar as this points to our obligations in human rights law and covenant law and the treaties, I'm concerned that it's too lightly held in this document, and moreover that it's not pointing to another document with equal processes, with equal attachments, and that part is difficult. We owe any real or constructive knowledge of projects that triggers that duty to consult. We owe some that we start. We owe a duty, and we must provide free, prior, and informed consent and accommodation, Madam Speaker. And none of that is dealt with in this document. And so when we then turn and say, well, you know, we're going to collaborate with Indigenous Relations Division, we have now a policy document that we pass, Madam Speaker, that doesn't at all speak to the burden then that IRD has, that is separate and apart from what we are laying out here. So it is a good first step, perhaps, but I'm concerned it isn't seriously held, and the rest of the work wasn't done. The rest of the work with respect to the legal obligations, the duty of the Crown, the concepts that differ, that are unfortunately held too light because it is in a policy on engagement. And it is a square peg, Madam Speaker, and a round hole. I'm concerned that it is a paragraph within the policy that we're going to pass, but there is, you know, I appreciate that there is specific updates on the recognition of within the policy purpose, within the definition. I'm concerned that the definitions, you know, don't expand or point to a different document. I'm concerned that the addition of collaboration with Indigenous Relations Division to policy responsibilities won't be understood in the rest of government. The word collaboration is a little lightly held here too, in my opinion, Madam Speaker. And, you know, perhaps, you know, I will suggest that we need to work on a separate document that we then point to on our duty to consult. Think about that. Think about it in light of free prior informed consent as an organization and any accommodations we need to do, and consider that further. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands, Councillor Schreier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my fellow councillors, members of council, for their comments and their insights on this issue. We're taking this rather seriously, and it's serious debate. In reference to Councillor Lukes and her appreciation of our four-year budget cycle. I did vote for the four-year budget cycle. I didn't think there was a reason not to. I just felt that when I looked at previous budget processes, we always had a forecast involved for 4 years, if not 10, if not longer. And that if we took these forecasts that the administration offered us every single budget, that was essentially part of a forecast. As a matter of fact, I don't know how to look at a budget without looking for towards the future. Every single thing we do is a forecast. Every single thing we do is for the future. It's not for now. In a sense, when it comes to budgets, you have to take a longer-term perspective, whether you're looking towards the future, but including when you're looking towards the past. The only reason I know where we're at budget-wise right now is by a historical perspective, where that history's 4 years or 10 years or whatever. That's the only way I know where we're at. We need a reference point in anything we do. That's the concept of perceiving reality. So when it comes to something as serious as a city budget, the only way I can't understand anything if we're looking at it in terms of a one-year perspective. That doesn't tell me anything. Where are we coming from? That's where we're at. Where are we going to? In fact, where we're going to is based on the past, not the present. The only thing the present offers us is the ability to make a decision now, our ability to change something based on the past. So when we look at these four-year forecasts, that's all very well. I was always looking at it that way. But let's face it, Madam Speaker, the reality is it's all based on the past. We create that past as we create the future. Days of future past, as Brian Mays might quote a song or an album. But in terms of that future tense, we need to understand that. So when it comes to budget consultation, public consultation on the budget, when have we explained to people how the budget's changed the most? When have we told the taxpayers, told the public in that consultation process, when have we said, what is the major change in their tax increases? Why have their taxes, fines, fees, levies, and rates gone up? Why have we been reducing services? We haven't been reducing every sector. We know that the major increase in our budget has been the capital budget. It's been due to construction. We've known that for years, Madam Speaker. In fact, just to put an extra nail in this, I will remind that last year I did ask our finance chair, Jeff Brawadi, if there was ever a year while he's been on council as the dean of this council, where there's ever been a year where the inflation of labor costs has matched the inflation of construction or capital costs. He said he did not recall if there's ever been a time when labor costs have increased at the same rate as construction or capital-intensive costs, to be sort of bring another dimension of reality to this. He says he did not recall, and he was right, because it never happened, not while he's been here.
I literally don't know if there's anything more that could be talked about on this topic. My colleague, please stick to the matter at hand.
Public consultation, Madam Speaker. So if we're going to have public consultation, we're going around spending an hour in this chamber talking about public consultation. I want to know when we've had that public consultation with people about why our taxes, fines, fees, levies, and rates are going up. but our services are going down, Madam Speaker. That's the public consultation I want to see, to bring it back to reality, Madam Speaker. So when we don't talk about that, I'm a little confused, and so are the people of Winnipeg. Why? Because when I talk about it, they didn't know that. I'm glad to ask that question of Councillor Brawadi. I'm glad for the answer he gave, because he gave an honest, realistic answer. I had to ask him, but he gave the answer. He doesn't recall when that happened. That's public consultation, Madam Speaker. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Is it the end of my speech?
Nearing the end, yeah.
I've
Thank you,
got 3 minutes.
Councillor Schreier, continue. Yeah, speaking to the report.
Well, I'm talking about what my fellow councillors have mentioned. I'm literally talking about what my other fellow councillors have mentioned. And I want to thank Councillor Mays for explaining, you know, in terms of...
I would like everyone to know that the word literally may mean literally, or it may mean the opposite of literally, since Generation Z has been
Okay, Councillor Lord, thank you
change.
for
But
that
it's just-
lesson.
it's-
Let's let Councillor Schreier continue and wrap this up. We've got a big agenda in front of us. We always do every month. So please continue, and let's get on to the next speaker.
Again, as I'm referring to the comments made by my fellow members of council, I want to thank Councillor Mays for giving his insight and explaining the as-of-right clause and how we are eliminating public consultation. I want to thank him for his elimination of that elimination, if I may. Now, we need to take a long-term approach. We need to think in terms of what this means to people. This isn't just some sort of academic exercise. People's lives are at stake here. People's quality of life. That's what we're dealing with here. And Madam Speaker, another fellow councillor, Councillor Rowlands, talked about the aspect of the various aspects in which we can go on the different tangents that relate specifically and realistically to this motion, talked about the issue of Indigenous relations. Well, I want to make the point as we go through our public consultations, guess what race or ethnic community has suffered the most in the last decade or the last generation from our changes in our economy? It's not the most progressive time in the history of our economy in our lifetime, kind of thing. And Madam Speaker, that is the Indigenous community. So why? Well, it's not just because they're Indigenous, Madam Speaker, it's because of their socioeconomic circumstances and their economic circumstances. Madam Speaker, we live in an era when the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So guess who that...
I stand in this council making over 6 figures as an Indigenous woman, so could he retract that we're all in poverty?
Madam Speaker, I wasn't referring to everybody. In fact, it's impossible to refer to. I said guess what group as a whole. By virtue of their socioeconomic circumstances, that happens to be the majority of the case. And if I gave the wrong impression that I was talking about 100% of any group, well, I certainly didn't mean to give that impression, because that never applies to reality, Madam Speaker. I didn't know I had to explain that. But that is the case. Madam Speaker, after all, how do we explain the fact that people's purchasing power is less than it was a generation ago? And to whom does it apply the most? And it applies most to those who are poorest. And guess why we have Indigenous relations, Madam Speaker? It's not just for social, but it's also for economic. That is my perspective. That's what I believe in, because that's the reality of our lives, Madam Speaker. So I cannot give up on this if I care. So I have to relate to how this relates to our budget consultation, Madam Speaker. We need to talk. Thank you, Miigwech.
Thank you. I want to remind everyone to choose our words carefully as we proceed in the day. Words matter. Intention matters. Next speaker. Seeing none, Councillor Gilroy, do you wish to close?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do think we can do some changes along the way. If I know that Councillor Rowlands raised some concerns that, I mean, that's of interest to me. But I think this is a huge step forward that we've never done before. And in particular, my ward, where I know there is a lack of engagement. And in order for us to make important decisions that is really equitable among everybody, important engagement needs to happen in all parts of the city, which isn't really happening. And the types of engagement matter. Me standing up in front of my community with just a projector talking about numbers, that's not the engagement they want. And quite frankly, even just me as a city councillor, that's not the engagement I want. So in here, under 6, concerning equity, traditional public engagement methods have often failed, and inclusive representation of the entire community, leading to lack of diversity and inclusion of equity groups. So we are changing this, and we're really going to look at how we're going to engage people. And I want to commend Councillor Santos and her ward. They are under the secondary plan. They're actually going out to the cleanups in her ward that's taking place on Saturday and engaging with people where they're at, meeting people where they're at. And I think those are critical steps that we need to take, and this policy is putting that forward. So I want to do that. My amending motion is looking to do that kind of work with the budget as well. So I'm hoping you'll support the amending motion, and I hope you support the work that has been put here today, because it is a huge start and something we really haven't had before, and looking forward to these changes happening at the city. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You can call the question, please.
All in favor of amending motion 1?
Aye.
Contrary? That's carried. Councillor Rowlands noted in opposition to the amending motion. All in favor of item 3 as amended? Aye. Contrary? Okay. There'll be a recorded vote. Or no, not for 3, just 3 in opposition. Okay, noted. And that item is carried. Mr. Mayor, next report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to introduce the report of April 16th and move adoption of consent agenda items 1 to 11.
Item 2, garbage cleanup at encampments. Councillor Reedy. 3, bylaw enforcement consolidation. Councillor Wyatt. 1, city representative, Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation Board.
1, 2, 3, and 9.
Subdivision and rezoning, 1065, 1069 Notre Dame Avenue. Okay, call the question on the remaining 4 through 8, 10 and 11. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Madam Clerk, item 1.
Item number 1, City Representative, Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation, Board of Directors.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a motion that Moira Gear be appointed as the city's representative to the Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation Board of Directors. I look forward to hear from my colleagues.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt?
Hey, Madam Speaker, I look forward to working with Ms. Moira Gear on the board, who's being appointed, and thank the Winnipeg Housing for doing such a good job. They've made applications to the HAF funding stream. We've been working actively with them as a board, supporting them in that effort. They're a very credible organization, and hope that they can secure funds for their initiatives and projects to build affordable housing. Thank you.
Councillor Reedy?
Madam Speaker, as I said at EPC, and I really would love to say it one more time, I'm looking forward to working with Ms. Gear on the board of the Winnipeg Housing Rehab Corp. I think it's very important we've put in place a very senior public servant in this role to work with us on the board to achieve the goal of trying to build a lot more affordable housing, whatever style it is, as well as housing that has supports for the citizens that live in it. And one example of that project is one on Toronto, where we built a brand new building under the Rapid Housing Initiative, and it's working really well. It's housing for women, and I understand it's getting great results. So looking forward to Ms. Gear. Good selection, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to close on the item?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to echo my colleagues, Councillors Wyatt and Eady, on their praise of Deputy CAO Moira Gear and the work that she has done and will do. And so I invite you to call the question, please.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Madam Clerk?
Item number 2, garbage cleanup at encampments.
Mr. Mayor, to introduce the item if you wish.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It was good to hear from Jamil Mahood and Tessa Blakey White Cloud today. And I know that Silo Mission, as well as Main Street Project, in partnership with Downtown Community Safety Partnership, have brought forward an idea that executive policy has supported. I know that every councillor on this council is concerned about the need for cleanups of encampments. I think it hits every ward to some degree, but I know that councillors Santos and Rollins and Gilroy and Edie, among others, have been certainly affected by the need for cleanup, and so I think we have a solution here, or at least a pilot project solution. I hope that everybody supports it, but I look forward to hearing from others.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Item 2. Oh, pardon me. Mayor just introduced it. Yes. Councillor Schreier? I saw a hand up here.
Oh,
No,
no,
Councillor
I-
Santos.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand before you today to discuss an ongoing issue that touches our basic human dignities and environmental responsibilities. The cleanup of large bulky waste and debris from encampments throughout our city. I believe that addressing the issue effectively requires compassion, understanding, and respect for both our environment and the individuals impacted by chronic homelessness. Last year, I wrote a motion that proposes a compassionate approach to cleaning up debris and bulky waste at encampments. This involves regularly scheduled garbage cleanup from these sites, possibly providing bins or other waste disposal methods directly at encampments, and ensuring that these services are carried out with respect and dignity for the residences and their belongings. In implementing this initiative, we are calling it a mindful cleanup. It is vital that we engage directly with those affected. This means not only the unsheltered residences, but also community organizations that work with the homeless population. Their insights and cooperation will be invaluable in making this pilot project a success. So I want to quickly provide several reasons why we should be supporting this pilot project. First and foremost, it is important to remember that the mandate of the City of Winnipeg includes garbage collection throughout our communities. This responsibility is not only about maintaining aesthetic standards, but also about preserving public health and ensuring a livable environment for all citizens, regardless of their living situation. But we also know that the provincial government should be responsible for social housing and providing the necessary wraparound supports. These are essential components in the larger framework designed to address homelessness. But these are long-term solutions and do not free us from our immediate responsibilities. Secondly, as stewards of the land and water, we have a duty to prevent pollution and protect our natural resources. Large, bulky waste and debris that was not managed properly over the last few years ended up in our rivers and eventually into Lake Winnipeg. We know this is a threat to wildlife and water quality and contradicts our commitment to sustainability and environment protection. I also do not want to overlook the important benefit of our proactive approach to consistently removing large, bulky waste, needles, and potential fire hazards. By doing so, we will be reducing the calls for service to our emergency service responders, of course, the Winnipeg Fire Paramedics and the Winnipeg Police. Each intervention that we undertake not only enhances the safety and well-being of those living in and around encampments, but also reduces the operational strain on our emergency services. This strategic reduction in emergency services and calls allows our dedicated personnel to allocate their resources more effectively and focuses on other critical areas that require attention. Lastly, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Right to Housing has stated that individuals living in encampments have the right to live in a clean environment. They are also recognized as right holders. The rapporteur strongly opposes forced evictions without appropriate legal safeguards and alternatives.
I certainly do not support punitive measures as a solution to homelessness. Arresting or displacing the unsheltered population will not solve the underlying issues. So, good conversation with the community. I was recently reminded of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a theory that emphasizes the importance of understanding human motivational patterns. What motivates us to do good things and be good contributing members of society? Individuals must fulfill lower level of basic needs, such as food, air, water, shelter, sleep, before they can attain a higher level of growth needs, such as personal security, financial security, health and well-being, safe from being illness. Recognizing this will help us understand why our first job is to make sure that everyone, especially our unsheltered neighbors, has access to basic life necessities. It's not just about doing the right thing. It's about creating that foundation. By ensuring that they have things like food, water, and shelter, we help pave the way for their journey towards stability and self-reliance. This theory underscores that securing these basic necessities is the very foundation of healing trauma and fostering human potential. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, hopefully I can finish in 2 minutes. If not, I may need a suspension of rules for extension. I am deeply driven by a simple principle. I've said this in this chambers before. It continues to resonate deeply with me, both personally and professionally. Treat others how you want to be treated. This guiding rule, alongside some wisdom from my dad, who has always said to me, you never know a person's true story until you've walked a mile in their shoes, which continues to steer my approach towards advocacy and policy changes here at City Hall. While I always will continue to advocate for more solutions like the Housing First model and building more rent-geared to income housing, we must also, in the short term, address the need for cleanliness and safety in our encampments. I am really, really excited, Madam Speaker, for the very first time on this job. We find ourselves at a juncture where we have leaders in our community, such as the Mayor and the Premier, are aligned together on this issue. The development of a Housing First protocol, which prioritizes providing unsheltered residences with stable housing as a preliminary step, together with holistic wraparound support, I am eagerly anticipating this report and this protocol. This initiative cannot come soon enough. So our commitment to these long-term solutions, it doesn't mean we don't overlook the immediate needs of our community. So the lessons that I spoke of earlier in my speech should remind us that empathy, understanding, and patience are crucial in addressing the complexities of homelessness. Our commitment today, Madam Speaker, I hope it's a unanimous vote, in cleaning up encampments in a mindful and in a compassionate manner, is just one step on this journey. As we press forward, our solution must incorporate the immediate needs of the homeless population, together with creating continuous care system that addresses all aspects from safety, security, to health and well-being. With Council's support and our collective efforts, we can ensure that the dignity of every city resident is upheld, and that we lay a strong, compassionate foundation for healing, growth, and stability across our community and Winnipeg as a whole. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands?
That was Councillor Santos, but I would gladly accept that speech as my own.
Councillor Gilroy?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to rise and I want to thank Councillor Santos for her work on this. Of course, this is something that's impacting my ward as well. Not only the residents of my encampments, but the residents that are living in and around my encampments. I do, I support this, but it's hard to support it because I've been working a lot with the people living in my encampments. I took a lot of last year and I've visited and I got to know people and housed some people and found out why they're hard to house, and really I'm understanding that this is a much complex issue And most of these people do not want to be housed. I mean, most of these people do not want to be homeless. And so we're actually, some of our policies are kind of keeping people unhoused. So I struggle with that a bit. I do believe we need to look at our shelter system and look how it needs to be more of a longer term stay than a one-night fix, and where people can bring their belongings and keep them there. Those are sometimes reasons why people want to stay out on the street, because they have belongings, and those are very important and valuable to them. So we need to look at the space that we have available, and we might need to add more space in order to do that kind of work. We also need to look at licensing facilities that are fully funded through EIA. That's critical. We can build all the housing we want right now, but it's not going to be able to house people unless we have supports inside those buildings. And I have proof of that within my community, where people are really struggling even inside these buildings, and it's hard for them to even stay housed, and that even filters out onto the streets, into the back lanes. So we got a lot of work, Madam Speaker, and so I rise supporting this because I do think it's something that we need, but I really want to challenge us to look at finding mechanisms right now that help deal with the issues that people are living on our streets, in our parks, and it's not safe for them, Madam Speaker. And for many of them, they don't want to be unhoused. For many of them, they can't make the right decisions in order to stay housed, so they need supports around that, Madam Speaker. And for many of them, they're not safe. They're not safe in the encampments. I have had a gentleman burned. I've had people die, and I've had women abused in our are in these encampments. So I do support the cleanup of them, it's important, but I really want to challenge us to keep moving the needle forward, and us for looking at alternative ways while we build the housing that we need. I think there are some ways that we can be doing to protect some of the most vulnerable people we have in our community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Eadie?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, of course, will be voting for the recommendation of the Executive Policy Committee in regards to this issue of solid waste garbage around encampments, Madam Speaker. But I just want to put something on the record here. To make it very clear, there are people who are housed, and there's garbage problems related around those people living in areas of the city. And there's garbage problems. There's garbage problems. We have people who are living rough, living out, and they, for whatever reason, they struggle. We have them going up and down back lanes, dumping garbage bins put out for the day, and then the garbage ends up out in the back lanes, and we don't actually have a service to deal with that. Saturday, April 27th, that's this Saturday, William White neighborhood and the Point Douglas Residents Committee in North Point Douglas in my ward are having their community cleanup annual. But there's a certain amount you can only expect residents and volunteers to deal with. And the garbage in these two neighborhoods, even along the riverbanks where there are encampments as well, it's just unbelievable. It has been that way. We received a whole chain of emails of people who continue to be frustrated, and they say, Eadie, you're not doing nothing yet. Well, Councillor Santos, Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Eadie, and other councillors have been working hard at trying to resolve the garbage problem. But then I looked at this report. So if we were to tackle it from a certain perspective, $4 million, the cost, I don't know what model you look at, Madam Speaker, but there's different ways that you might be able to try to do something, Madam Speaker, in terms of the garbage. But so I don't want anybody in the city of Winnipeg to get the idea that it's just people who have no choice but to live in encampments are causing a garbage problem. It goes far beyond that, Madam Speaker. You have property owners who, somebody can't pay the rent, whatever, they have to go, landlords pile up everything and they dump it in somebody else's yard, give them a problem. Make note of a motion I have, because this kind of stuff is happening all over the place. In my ward, even to some degree in Elmwood. We heard Councillor Schreier speak about encampments. The ones he's talking about, I think most of them are across a minute across the Harry Lazarenko Bridge over into my ward and along the river. But there have been encampments as well in Elmwood, Madam Speaker, and housing is the long-term option. I'm not going to speak to housing. I'm working on that with Winnipeg Housing Rehab, and there's others who are working really hard, like Councillor Rowlands and everybody else, trying to get this housing thing going, and supportive housing, because we have housed some people from encampments. They go into an apartment block, say on Sutherland, and nobody's dealing with the solid waste garbage problem in an appropriate manner. Some people need supports to explain this is how you deal with garbage in the city of Winnipeg. And so there's all kinds of different issues related to it. But I appreciate the policy here, pilot, I mean. But I think I'm going to have to undertake a pilot myself, as Councillor Schreier mentioned. Many of those people living in the encampment, they don't want to live around a bunch of garbage. I'm thinking of I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. Maybe I could use some of my rent money for office. Maybe I could use some of that to do a pilot where once a week there's a bin placed there. Give those people living in the encampments the tools, the garbage bags and the pickers or whatever it takes to clean up that garbage. And also, if they got a old piece of furniture that they're using and they want to get rid of it, once a week there's a bin there. It'll be gone at the end of the day, but because you know what? A lot of those people understand they have rights, but they also understand that they have a responsibility to keep things clean and tidy, and they don't want to live amongst a lot of garbage. So, Madam Speaker, I guess I'll have to try that, because the $4 or $2 million options doesn't sound like they're on it. And you know, I don't know why we have to have not-for-profit groups having to do this. We have to find a model that works, Madam Speaker, that is a little more predictable, and because pilots just not enough. We'll have encampments for at least the next 10 years, I'm sure, by the time all the proper housing, or actually Manitoba Housing, you know, the minister has, there's a lot of renovations coming. There's a lot of investment coming from the Manitoba government to provide housing. But, you know, even with the Winnipeg Housing Rehab, we've got a bunch of suites that need renovation, but we don't get enough subsidy from the provincial government to do those ongoing renovations that need to be done. But, you know, we have a whole bunch of suites that people could be living in. So does Manitoba Housing. So hopefully, you know, those kind of things will happen. But even Manitoba Housing in my ward has a garbage problem. A garbage problem. They pile up a bunch of garbage by the back lane, and their funding was reduced, so they didn't pick up the garbage. Okay? It went to every 2 weeks. And then what happens in that particular neighborhood, it's pile on, or a landlord comes driving, oh, there's a pile of garbage, I'll just throw this garbage there. And that's what happened. So the previous CAO spoke to the provincial government about it. Hasn't been quite that problem, but even Manitoba Housing has solid waste issues that they need to deal with, so that the neighborhoods and where they exist don't have this problem. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Reedy. Next is Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise this morning in support of the motion before us in terms of cleaning up the encampments. Earlier this month, April 15th, Councillor Santos in my office got together and worked on a project with Al Weeb, who has lived experience around homelessness. And I want to thank the other councillors that were also involved, including Councillor Rollins, Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Sharma, yourself, Councillor Lukes, Councillor Allard, Councillor Dobson, and Councillor Eadie. And special thanks to Mayor Gillingham, who attended and shared a few words with regards to the city's approach and action on homelessness, including the establishment of an office. Jared Baker is the person that is taking the lead on homelessness and how it is impacting our city. It's fair to say, Madam Speaker, that homelessness is not just a local issue in our wards, in our city. I would feel very confident in saying that homelessness impacts every jurisdiction across this nation, and indeed here in North America. Having spoken with a superintendent from the Vancouver Police Department who was here in Winnipeg mentoring our chief, having a conversation with him about the struggles of Vancouver and East Hastings District, he also made mention to me that the city of San Francisco is at the point where they're almost ready to throw in the towel in terms of what they're facing as a crisis in that city. And Portland, Oregon is facing similar challenges. So we have to have a strategy. We have to have a plan in place. It's great to hear the announcements that have been made by the federal government in terms of their commitment towards homelessness and the building of new homes to bring down the affordability aspects. It's great to hear the provincial budget that announced $116 million in new housing supports and initiatives, and the ongoing work that we're doing here at the city, not only to deal with the homelessness, but to deal with the root causes of homelessness, the impacts that it has on our local community. In terms of the cleaning of encampments, I just want to make sure that as that work is being carried out, that there's a safety component that is added to that in terms of some of the materials and debris that would be left at these sites, recognizing that some of it will be biohazardous, and ensuring that the proper safety protocols would be in place and enforced to ensure that those that are attending to the sites are not adversely impacted in terms of those materials that are left behind. But I do support this. It's about taking pride in our city. It's about having some solutions in place. And I recognize some of the pushback or feedback that will take place in terms of it's encouraging homelessness or it's enabling homelessness. I don't think homelessness is something you encourage or enable. It's a result of people's situations and something that we have to acknowledge that individuals don't want to be homeless. They don't want to be unhoused. It's a situation that they're facing, and we have to work with communities. We have to work with individuals. We're working with the nonprofits. As a matter of fact, as a result of the symposium that took place on April 15th, we had a great breakout session lasting well over an hour where we challenged those not-for-profits to provide responses, actionable responses to each of the three levels of government. We're in the midst of collecting and compiling that information, and we'll provide a summary report that each of the levels of government can review and formulate policies around, and hopefully we can put an end to homelessness, if not moving towards reducing homelessness in our communities and providing dignity to those that are unhoused and finding it a challenge to set their lives back on a course of being homed and providing back to our community. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Wyatt, and then Councillor Schreier.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I rise. I thank Councillor Santos for her words. I want to speak about the function of the actual fact that we actually have encampments, because I think it's directly related to the motion at hand and the issue at hand and what we have to deal with today. Housing, the federal parliament voted that housing is a right through their national housing strategy. They did that, what, over 5 years ago. With that came no requirements on them to actually live up to that obligation. No requirements whatsoever. We now see in the last federal budget $18 billion for housing. By the time that money starts to flow through their various means and mechanisms and bureaucracy of the federal government, the reality is this government will probably not be in power by the time it actually potentially starts to hit the streets. In reality, then, it's a nice announcement. Unfortunately, at a $50 billion deficit, they're driving up the pressure fiscally on the monetary policy. Next year, 25 to 50% of people's mortgages come up for renewal. Many of them are not going to be able to renew. You want to talk about homelessness? Wait till next year. And ironically, it's being done in the name of building more housing, a lot of it, 18 billion of the 50. And the money will probably not be hitting the streets in time to actually make a difference if the government changes. We choose, Madam Speaker, as a society, not to house people. We choose to do that. We today in Winnipeg do a better job of looking after feral cats than we do human beings. We know that because we've heard the delegations about the feral cats at our standing committee in the last 6 months. Now, what does that say? Now, that's just not Winnipeg, by the way. I want to be fair to our city. It's not just us. Montreal has 30,000 people who are living in a state of homelessness. Toronto, even more. Vancouver. Right across this country, we've decided to be American and live with these encampments. We tear down one encampment, another will go up. Or they'll go up in places that you don't see. I ran into a fellow who was homeless, and he told me where he's living, in his tent, on the border of Councillor Schreier's ward and mine. We choose not to house these folks. I would suggest, Madam Speaker, there are models out there. This is not rocket science. If we want to say as a society that housing is a right, dignified housing, a very good friend of mine and many of yours, who about a year and a half ago went to visit family in Holland. Winnipeg Free Press called him the greatest mayor we never had. He ran for mayor twice, Peter Kaufman. Came back and said, you know, I looked around, Russ. I didn't see anybody living in the streets. And I asked my family. And he said, we as a society, his family told him, chose not to tolerate that. We ensure that every human being has nothing fancy. If they need a place, 250 square feet, a bed, a little washroom, something to cook on, and the mental health addiction services to be plugged in nearby to help people get back up on their feet. A gentleman in Councillor Berwadi's ward I spoke to at the corner of Chief Peguis in Henderson, in his late 60s. He told me, he said, Russ, I was once a long-haul truck driver, and some things happened in my life, and look where I am now. And some people have the supports from family and others, and some don't. And I say, Madam Speaker, there, by the grace of God, go I. So let's address this, but let's galvanize ourselves to do what it doesn't have to reinvent. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. What's been done in Scandinavia and Western European countries to properly house people, so we don't have this scenario where we look after cats better than human beings. This is what we are doing today here in Winnipeg. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Schreier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank Councillor Santos and as Councillor Chambers has made those other councillors that have been involved in the process of conversation, educating themselves, and those involved in getting us to this point here on this issue of what I like to think is the right for people to live in clean and safe environment. On my block, on my street, across where I live, just exactly where I live, where you can see it from my window, I want to thank members of my community. I want to thank Lorraine Kaler, who used to run the Elmwood Bear Clan walk that I would walk with. And with our hands and our feet, the cleanups that we would do, including, you know, it's just the reality of what we do with needle pickup and the safe process by which we dispose of needles. As an example, and I mention it because it's really, really important to our community. How do I know this? Because they tell us. But I want to thank Lorraine Kaler and the Elmwood Bear Clan for building trust in our community, for building trust with those that live in these encampments along the river on my block and my neighborhood and my ward. Councillor Wyatt mentioned mortgages and the relationship between, well, economics and homelessness. Well, yeah, there's certainly a direct cause and effect. It's more complicated than that, but that is truly part of it. Let's not kid ourselves. And he talked about mortgages. He mentioned mortgages. I'm going to mention rent, because the majority of the people that are going to, it's obviously related. We're talking about housing costs going up. But when it comes to those that are homeless and those that have the potential to become homeless, the majority of those people, we know, are paying rent. But it's all related. But let's just not forget that. And I don't want the public to think that reality isn't being discussed here in this chamber. That's how real it is. And Councillor Wyatt says just wait until the interest rates on renegotiated mortgages are coming up. Well, I've been mentioning this for years, that interest rates are part of the disparity, the increase in disparity between the rich and the poor. And if you want to know that disparity, walk with me in my neighborhood. Walk down the street with me in my neighborhood, on my street, on my block, where I live. Councillor Santos says you don't know what it is to another person live unless you walk a mile in their shoes. I'm not pretending I walk a mile in their shoes. I'm just saying I'm walking with them in my neighborhood on my street. And because I'm Johnny on the spot, given where I live, sometimes, as Councillor Eadie made the point, well, sometimes it's incumbent upon me to search for the garbage and recycling bins, because that's where I live. So I'm the councillor, so hey, Jason, where's my garbage and recycling bin? So I'll go look for it. You know, who else is supposed to do it, I suppose? I don't know, but I'm glad that here at City Council we're talking about this in a more larger scale structured way. We do things in my ward, in my community, and I don't take credit for it. I'm very grateful for the Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal Corporation. I'm very grateful for Brittany and Kendall and Leilani for creating the new Unity Walk in Elmwood, which obviously walks right down my street, of course, and for the work they do and continuing to build that trust within our community. When I mean my community, I mean my neighbors. When I mean my neighbors, I'm including those that live in the homeless encampments, because they're my next door neighbors, eh? So this is very realistic to me. This is, how do you call that? Bringing it back home. What do I mean bring it back home? I mean literally, I can see it from my front window. So I'm glad for the realism here. But if you want to know what I mean by the disparity, growing disparity between rich and poor, consider again Councillor White's concept, forecast about wait for the new interest rates to come up. Who's going to suffer the most? Who's at a greater, when it comes to the economic reasons for why one becomes homeless, who's at greater risk? Those are the poorest. Is it disproportionately Indigenous? Yes. I don't know how else to put it. It is not just Indigenous, and there's different ways it's going to express itself. And you can't solve this merely as an Indigenous issue, because it's not. It's a socioeconomic issue as well. The poor are getting poorer, regardless of race. But let's not forget how it interplays. That's our job. We're the leaders. It's complicated, but it's our job to deal. Today, we're doing something constructive. And I'm glad to be part of something that's not merely just on my street. What we do in Elmwood, working with the Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal Corporation, working with the Elmwood Bear Clan, working with the Unity Walk, working with the Glendale Neighborhood Association, working with my neighbors. That's something that we're doing on a mini scale, on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, in my neighborhood, including a neighborhood that I do share with Councillor Eadie, because I do live just a half a block from Councillor Eadie's ward, and therefore a block from further on foot, a block on foot from other encampments of which Councillor Eadie speaks. This is my neighborhood, and I share it with a lot of different kinds of people. But this is dealing, and I'm grateful. Miigwech.
Thank you. Councillor Rollins?
Thank you. I want to thank my colleagues on this issue and recognize that we have a long history of garbage, bulky waste, and encampment dispositions that we've gone through the years, some dating last term, but just this term, we had an item titled Update on Downtown Revitalization Projects that included garbage, bulky waste, and encampment dispositions, solid waste collection, another item that included a report back in conjunction with a garbage management plan. We had multifamily waste diversion and management strategy. We had a demolition site debris one where the public service was to report back on a problem properties task force. Consolidating city garbage services, where the public service is to report back, hoarding task force update, and information sharing agreement. We had a garbage cleanup at encampments motion and public and private overview of garbage and recycling collection. So, Madam Speaker, we have no shortage of dispositions, but it is Passover, Madam Speaker, and so we say in Hebrew, Man Yishtana. Why is this night different from all other nights? And to that end, I want to acknowledge all the folks that have come together in community to make, this item a different outcome for the city of Winnipeg. I want to, in particular, thank Tessa Blakey, Jamil Mahmood for coming today and coming always to encourage council to separate the symptoms and the causes of poverty, and to remind us to do so in act, in policy, and in at every step in line with our Kikina Oma strategy. Everyone is conscious of the focus of housing, including me as your housing chair. We are working on the shortage of housing, including social housing. And Councillor Eadie, Madam Speaker, spoke of the Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation. We continue to work on HIZ zones, the Affordable Housing Now, the Housing Accelerator Fund, and continued federal, provincial, Indigenous government work as Councillor Santos, the mover of this motion, spoke so eloquently about when she talked about the alignment of the mayor and the current premier's offices. May 4th, Madam Speaker, the Clan Mothers, Downtown Community Safety Patrol, OPK, Community Unity, Main Street Project, the Clan Mothers Healing Village, all are coming together for a downtown cleanup, Madam Speaker. So the people power continues. It continues in my ward, it continues in Councillor Santos' ward, it continues in many of our wards as people in Councillor Luke's ward start cleaning up from spring. May 4th, everyone's invited to 38 Maple, Clan Mothers Healing Lodge for the cleanup in the downtown. Madam Speaker, I'm hoping this is a unanimous motion today, but I want to acknowledge everyone that got council to this point of a disposition that I think will be a human rights-centered outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to close.
You can call the question. Thank you.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Madam Clerk?
Item number 3, bylaw enforcement consolidation.
Mr. Mayor?
I'll wait to hear from my colleagues, please.
Councillor Eady?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll try to be quick. I know my colleagues didn't expect all these speeches. Madam Speaker, I will be voting to receive this as information, but as I spoke at EPC, Madam Speaker, I have some concerns about what I'm reading in this report. And, you know, the standardization of how bylaws are enforced, that's really good. I mean that's fine, but I'm not thinking that that's going to resolve all the issues. Now, there are entities within the city who have expertise, such as the parking authority. So those bylaws are already being dealt with, and they've had other bylaws added to their portfolio. I won't be critical today, but I'm pretty critical of how they develop policy around some of these bylaw things, and very concerned, Madam Speaker. But aside from that, and they are the ones who you can appeal to on other bylaws that are outside of related to parking, Madam Speaker, which is good under the new the province. I don't know how new it is anymore, but it's been around for a while, and that's fine. I don't see a special operating agency becoming the city's main bylaw enforcement on everything. I don't think that's appropriate. And what won't be appropriate is the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service are the experts in the fire code and in anything related to the substance of those matters. So those bylaws that pertain to fire are important to stay there. It's the rest of the bylaw enforcement. We have the neighborhood livability, we have the vacant derelict buildings thing, there's some other ones, Madam Speaker. That's the ones that I was hoping to see a consolidation happen. And they're all property related, Madam Speaker, which, you know, technically falls under P&D property. That's what's in their name. So, Madam Speaker, wherever the consolidation happens, you know, this report, I don't know where it's going to end up at. All we know is at the end of 24, we're going to see some standardization, which is good. There's nothing the matter with that, Madam Speaker. And hopefully, you know, like our solid waste, I think they have the odd inspector to deal with issues that end up with garbage, right? Here we go, garbage, solid waste again. And that's in the neighborhood livability bylaw as well. But consolidation is important because, you know, we can have bylaw enforcement officers who can understand both vacant, derelict, and whatever. And I know that at certain times of the year, bylaw enforcement on neighborhood livability and other matters, they can't keep up at all, Madam Speaker. All of William White, all of North Point Douglas, all of Dufferin need a blitz. Every property needs to be inspected. Do they have the people power to get it done? It's almost too late. Like, it's crazy out there, crazy. So I'd like to see consolidation, one department of these property-related issues, and let's get on with it. We've amended many of these bylaws to supposedly improve our ability to deal with things, but there's more that we need to do. There's other councillors around the table who have some good ideas. Hopefully we see them happen, but, you know, all of this, it's taking too long, and this is a huge problem, not just everywhere, Madam Speaker, everywhere. If you live in the suburbs, you haven't the foggiest idea if you don't come around. But I get calls from people living in the suburb, how awful it looks when you come into the North End. And they put it on me. What are you doing about it, Councillor Eadie? You've been there for how many years? What are you doing about it? Let's get something done here, really, please. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt?
To rise and support Councillor Eadie and his comments. I've read the report, very disappointed. I want to thank, first of all, the chair of our standing committee, who we've been talking to about, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Santos, myself, Councillor Eadie, on this issue of the Consolidated Bylaw Enforcement Unit. But I read the report, and in the last line, second last line, it says that this will allow for results to be achieved in the short term across the organization. Well, what does short term actually mean? 1 year, 2 year, 5 years? And it's interesting, the bylaw compliance activities are fair, transparent, and consistent. This is one of the 4 of the core goals. Consistent. Consistent to what? To what we have now? Which is not proactive. We need proactive enforcement. And I'll draw attention to the last page. There are no financial implications associated with the recommendations of this report. You got to spend a bit of money, folks, to pull this together, I'm afraid, to make it work. Ironically, it actually could pay for itself if we did proactive enforcement. Right across the board, we have a scenario where right now, in parts of our neighborhood, not far from, we could walk out of here right now at lunch and take a look, where we have slum landlords, many of them not even residents of this city. We have absentee landlords. You go to suburban neighborhoods like mine or Councillor Luke's or Councillor Duncan, 80 to 90% of the homes are owned. You go to neighborhoods like Councillor Eadie, 80 to 90% are rented. And there's no enforcement on those landlords to do certain things. There's commercial properties, simple things. The sign in the stand-up pylon sign is missing. You see the ugliness of the city. You know, simple little things that could beautify our city if we enforced our bylaws like other cities do. Yes, it does take a bit of money to do that, but if we did a business plan over 5 or 10 years and we showed the enforcement levels and we showed that maybe we don't create a massive bylaw enforcement unit on a permanent basis, but we ratchet up for a period of time, and then once we get the bylaws being enforced, we can pull back. We have done that before, Madam Speaker. We had a floating permits department before it was made permanent, based on growth, based on the need. And then that was incorporated to be permanent. Some of us didn't like that because we knew we needed that extra capacity when we need it based on the market. Same thing with bylaws. We could do this, but it has to, I would encourage EPC, I would encourage the mayor and IEPC, let's make this a real effort, because this one item alone could do wonders to beautify, to improve morale in our city, to make people feel safe in their neighborhoods again, what Councillor Eadie's talking about, and the frustration he feels. I could only imagine representing his ward and having to deal with these things, because I'm a perfectionist, I would go crazy. I mean, it would be, and right now, we all have, in suburbs, we all have the one person who's won't clean their shrubs, won't cut their grass, won't, collect garbage in the backyard, and we have to get bylaw enforcement. But even that's a struggle for us. Now, could you imagine what Councillors Eadie and Santos and Gilroy must deal with at times with regards to the inability for us to enforce our bylaws proactively? Get proactive in this document. Find out when this will be delivered and what would it take to do it financially, and what can we receive potentially in terms of the fines and the enforcement of bylaws, because that will go hand in hand. Sure, it may cost more than the actual revenue coming in fines, but the reality is, there are right now, the majority of property owners and citizens in the city are living up to the bylaws of the city. And if they're going and they're doing this on their own, as good citizens, maintaining their properties, maintaining based on what our bylaws require, I think it's fair and right that the city should enforce those that choose not to for whatever reason. Because of the fact that everyone else is doing it basically because they're good citizens, but those like slum landlords, absentee property owners from Vancouver or wherever they are, they don't care. They don't see it, they don't care. Well, it's time to enforce our bylaws, Madam Speaker, and I hope EPC could take this back. I hope IEPC could take another run at this. I would really encourage them to do so. And anything I could do to help, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Mr. Mayor, to close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the comments from my colleagues. Just a reminder today that what we're looking at is that a corporate enforcement strategy, which should be completed by the end of this year. This will be a standardization resulting in increased enforcement, improving consistency, efficiency, and effectiveness of the various city bylaw enforcement programs. And so appreciate that our staff is working on making a better bylaw enforcement strategy, bringing it to us as council, presenting it so that there's consistency and standardization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll call the question on item 3. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.
Opposed, actually, given that closing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Eady. Seeing the hour, it's time to recess and reconvene at 1:15. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to reconvene our council meeting of April 25th, 2024. Next speaker is Councillor Wyatt has a statement to make to the citizens of Winnipeg and council. Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you. I rise, Madam Speaker, to make an apology. My use of the term bicycle Nazis was meant by me to mean militant and/or demeaning, in other words, authoritarian in nature. However, the term bicycle Nazis could be interpreted differently, and therefore, at this time, I would like to extend my apology to anyone offended by its use, including Bike Winnipeg. Thank you very much, and thank you for the time of the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. We were on the report of the Executive Policy Committee, item 9. Councillor Wyatt's going to leave the chamber. He's declaring a conflict on the item. Mr. Mayor, to introduce item 9, which is Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Item number 9, subdivision and rezoning, 1065 and 1069 Notre Dame Avenue and 1090 Winnipeg Avenue, DAS said 2 of 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I'm correct, I think it was Councillor Wyatt who stood the matter down, so he'd have opportunity to recuse himself, which I appreciate. And so I'll wait to hear from others if they have any comments.
Okay. No speakers. Mr. Mayor, to close, if you wish.
Call the question, please, Madam Speaker.
Call the vote on item 9. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? That's carried. Okay, we have motion 3. Okay, motion 3 is moved by Councillor Eady and seconded by Councillor Schreier. This is on the topic of establishment of a property tax credit program, and it's an automatic referral to the Standing Committee. Next, we'll just wait for Councillor Wyatt here. It is motion 4, moved by Councillor Wyatt and seconded by Councillor Eady. It's regarding Whiteout Street Party venues. Councillor Wyatt.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move suspension of the rules to deal with this item presently and vote recorded if possible.
Okay, suspension of the rules has been requested to deal with the item today. It's time sensitive in nature. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Okay, we'll call for a recorded vote. All in favor of dealing with the item today, please rise.
Councillors Edie, Schreier, Wyatt.
Those opposed, please rise.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Brawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Lukes, Mays, Rollins, Santos, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
Well, you have to vote. You have to vote.
Councillor Gilroy, are you opposed or in favor?
Regarding suspension of the rules to consider the item.
Okay. it's
The vote,
recorded
Madam
in
Speaker,
opposition.
yeas 3, nays 12.
Okay. Motion 4 is lost for today, but it'll be an automatic referral. Next is bylaws for Executive Policy Committee. Mr. Mayor.
I move that bylaw number 39, 2024 be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 39 of 2024.
I move that bylaw number 39, 2024 be read a third time and that the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Madam Speaker, I move that the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 50, 2024, bylaw number 51, 2024, bylaw number 52, 2024, bylaw number 53, 2024.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 50 of 2024, bylaw number 51 of 2024, bylaw number 52 of 2024, and bylaw number 53 of 2024.
I move the bylaws number 50, 2024 to 53, 2024, both inclusive, be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaws number 50 of 2024 to 53 of 2024, both inclusive.
Mr. Mayor,
I move that the rule be suspended and bylaws number 50, 2024 to 53, 2024, both inclusive, be read a third time, and that the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. We'll now have question period for the mayor. Any questions for Mayor Gillingham? Councillor Wyatt.
Yes, yesterday, Mr. Mayor, or last night, forwarded an email to the CAO regarding a planned protest for May the 1st that's taking place regarding the ongoing issue happening in the Middle East. It's happening at 5:30, which is a Wednesday, May 1st, and I just wanted to raise it to stress the importance of security in the campus. There's many employees who work past 4:30, including members of council, just to ensure that steps are taken to ensure the safety and security of everybody here in the campus. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as
Through you, Madam Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the council for his apology. I really do appreciate that. The other matter on the protest, thank you to the council for forwarding the information, and certainly if you forward the information to the CAO as well, that's really good to ensure that our the team on the campus is ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question.
And I know the mayor is a friend of Israel, and one of the issues that has arisen, but Toronto's addressing now with their police services in terms of dealing with language relating to hate language and anti-Semitic language, taking steps to enforce the hate laws of the country, and it's something else that I passed on in the email as well. I'm assuming the Winnipeg Police Service are doing that already, but it's just something to highlight to ensure that steps are taken, because apparently at some of these demonstrations that has been going on. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
I want to thank the councillor for passing that information on. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Santos.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if the mayor could give a bit of an update on what his conversations with the minister's office, specifically Minister Bernadette Smith's office, with respect to the Housing First model protocol, and some form of update would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Councillor Santos for the question and her ongoing work and advocacy. My office and I and my staff, Mr. Jared Baker, are having good dialogue, and we've established, I think, a good working relationship with Minister Smith and her deputy ministers and her staff, and the Premier as well. What I'm really pleased to see is that, at City Hall, many years ago, we adopted and started promoting a housing first model. We have been consistent advocates of that. We know that individuals we heard from today, the good folks that are doing work at Silo Mission, Main Street Project, and others, and many others in the, I'll say the sector agencies working with unsheltered people, have a housing first commitment as well. I know that Minister Smith has told me, and she said it publicly, that she too believes in a housing first approach. It's one of the reasons that we are working so hard as a council to get housing built, because to have a housing first approach, you need the housing for individuals so that we can get people into housing with the wraparound supports. I certainly won't speak for Minister Smith, but just simply to say we have a good working relationship. What I would like to see is what everyone else around here would like to see as well, and that is action, actually putting a model in place. There's some models right now, but putting one model in place where it's a coordinated approach, that every entity and agency, including levels of government, including First Nations and Indigenous governments, are involved in a coordinated plan, including housing providers, the private sector. I mean, there's a role for everybody in the city of Winnipeg really to play, and so many agencies really need to be part of a coordinated effort. There is some coordination happening within our sector right now. We appreciate that. But we need everybody involved. To use an illustration I've used, perhaps even overused, but I'll keep using it. It's the difference between kayaks in a river, or everybody in a boat, in a dragon boat, or a York boat might be more appropriate, each at an oar, so that we're moving together. And so that's the kind of conversation we're having with Minister Smith, and she certainly reciprocates that. And we want to move towards, some sort of action to make sure that we're coordinating our plans together. I have to keep in mind that this provincial government has only been in power for 6 months. And so, and Minister Smith's portfolio is very expansive. It's a big portfolio. The Premier brought a lot of really important ministries under her purview. And so good work is happening, regular dialogue is happening, and I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any further questions? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I probably should have approached the mayor beforehand and just to give him a heads up, but in speaking of updates, I'd like to know, Mr. Mayor, if you could comment on the community service officers and the impact that they've had in our downtown community in just over a month and a half of the implementation.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Councillor Chambers for the question. The early feedback on the establishment of the Community Safety Officer Program has been very, very positive. I think, Mr. Bob Christmas is providing excellent leadership of this work and the work of the community safety officers to address issues around transit stops and on transit as well. I know one of the things I think we'll be looking forward to is there's good coordination, but increased coordination. For example, the Downtown Community Safety Partnership, we fund that organization. They do excellent work as well. Community safety officers do great work. Our downtown police, foot patrol are doing good work. We have the downtown biz and the West End biz and the Exchange District biz, all of whom have foot patrols. So similar to my previous comment related to coordinating so that we have good cooperation, but reduce the duplication when it comes to homelessness and serving our unsheltered population, we need to do the same related to community safety. Two final things I would say is that we want to get results back on data and the types of incidents that are being addressed by the community safety officers, and we look forward to getting that information sometime, hopefully soon, from Mr. Christmas. He's just kind of gathering that information, so we'll get that information out so we can see, you know, where our team, our community safety officer team, has been really effective and what kind of incidents they're responding to. But the second is it's a campaign commitment that I made, and it is something that was in as part of a recommendation in the review of the Police Services Act that was conducted by the previous government, and that is that every municipality would move toward the establishment of a community safety plan. I want to see us move toward a community safety plan, and I'll be talking more about that, and hopefully we'll be asking us to take action on that in the coming months. And a community safety plan is that, where we look at coordinating all the entities and agencies, including the Winnipeg Police Service, community safety officers, Downtown Community Safety Patrol, Bear Clan, Biz Zone, agencies as well that are working in safety. Planning and coordination so that we reduce the overlap, but we make sure we have an effective plan for safety in our city. And I'm excited that we're going to get a chance to look at that. So more to come on that, but the community safety officers will play a key role in the establishment of that overall plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise just to ask through you, Madam Speaker, some questions to the Mayor, and I know he probably won't have the answers, so he might have to get his staff to get back to me. But one of the questions I had, there was changes in the last budget that really impact our poverty reduction strategy. One of the biggest change was the movement of the poverty reduction strategy to the CAO's office, and I've made it known I don't believe that this was the right choice. We did that with the climate change, and it really didn't work out. Not to say that our CAO isn't quite capable. I just think he's got a lot of things on the go, and I think within our committee structure and within the councillors is where it should be housed. So I have concerns over that. So I want to kind of know the numbers of the staff that moved over. I also want to know there's some key members of the people that wrote the poverty reduction strategy and been working on it that has now moved to the province. I want to ensure that those people are being replaced. I am concerned how this is going to wharf, the numbers of staff will wharf into the CAO's office and not really be working on what I think is a really important policy for Winnipeg, especially in lieu of all the stuff we're doing around homelessness, garbage, is just to really understand where that staff is going to be placed. Is that staff going to be taken in by doing other work, or is it going to be just on the poverty reduction strategy? And I guess the loss of the staff that's there now, when are they going to replace it? And kind of the overall plan through the CAO's office to carry this work out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Councillor Gilroy for the question. Yes, what I'll do is maybe meet with Councillor Gilroy to get, those questions, the details of those questions and more. Work with my staff in the CAO's office as well to get a response, and then I'll distribute this response by email to all of Council. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Eadie.
Yes, Madam Speaker. In the past, in the Mynarski ward, safety plans have been part of, in some neighborhoods, housing, but the residents associations have played an important role in providing the people who know to put together a plan to deal with it, as well as in North Point Douglas. I personally worked and we went door to door on a safety plan for that neighborhood with the North Point Douglas Women's Center. And so, Madam Speaker, when I hear about the higher level, we talk about the bigger groups, the Bear Clan. Actually, the Mama Bear Clan comes out of the North Point Douglas safety plan that was coordinated by Ms. Bishop, who was the director at the time. And so I just want to know, how are we including residents associations and so on who know, because they're living the problems every day, are they going to be included, Madam Speaker?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam through you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to Councillor Eadie for the question. The answer is yes, and again, not to get too far, in front of ourselves here, but one of the thoughts would be certainly every councillor, I envision, would be involved in the establishment of the community safety plan in one way or the other, because as Councillor Eadie points out, every councillor understands within their own ward the individuals, the groups, whether it's the block parents, the residents association, a local business group, whatever it may be, that really has some manner of plan or coordination for safety in place. And so neighborhood watch groups, for example, I mean, it's far-reaching, so I'm looking for really ultimately it would be the input of and participation of every councillor who can feed into this this dialogue or this discussion, the people, the groups in their community who are doing that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That closes off question period for the mayor. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development. There's no reports, no motions today. We'll get right into question period for our chair. Any questions for Councillor Browadi? Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. Councillor Rollins, the chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to move the adoption of the consent agenda, items 1 all the way through 19, with thanks to the committee, the Standing Policy Committee.
Thank you. We will have 2 pulled down. That'll be 13 and 16. 12.
One report from a previous agenda?
Oh, did I start on the wrong item? Sorry. Madam
let's do the March
Speaker,
13th.
let's
Thank
do
you,
the March
Councillor.
13th meeting first. Thank you, Councillor Eadie. I move item number 1 on the item dated March 13th pertaining to Golf Services Special Operating Agency, the golf plan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? That's carried.
Now, Madam Speaker, with the exception of items 12, 13, and 16, so moved. The whole item, 1 through 19.
Okay, Councillor Wyatt?
I need to stand down, Madam Speaker, 13 and 16.
We have those, yes.
Oh, good.
Councillor Schreier? 19.
Was 12
is
stood down, Madam Speaker?
Rezoning Narren Avenue. Yes, 12, 13, and 16. Any others? Okay, I'll call the question on item 1 through 11, 14, 15, 17, and 18. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Madam Clerk?
Item number 12, subdivision and rezoning, 193 McGregor Street, DAS said 4 of 2024.
Thank you. Councillor, yes.
It is uncomfortably warm in here. Would it be breaking protocol to remove our jackets?
Okay, Councillor Chambers is requesting a motion to allow members of council to remove your jackets. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Yes, that is something we've done by motion. Thank you. And I agree. It is hot.
Okay, Madam Speaker.
Madam Chair, Councillor
So to
Rollins.
introduce the item of subdivision and rezoning on 193 McGregor Street, I want to note that the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development really supported the subdivision proposed under the development application to be approved by council. There was care and attention taken to the subdivision, including that there's a servicing agreement with the City of Winnipeg, including that the zoning agreement with the City of Winnipeg be entered into to continue to show location and design of the buildings, et cetera, as we often do. So, you know, looking forward to hearing from my colleagues with respect to what the Standing Policy Committee and Executive Policy Committee confirm. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Next speaker, Councillor Eadie.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thanks for the introduction from the chairperson. But Madam Speaker, As you know, we voted on this in the community committee. And Madam Speaker, I just wanted to rise, and I don't know how to express my gratitude that this multifamily housing project is going to move ahead in the William White neighborhood. This is the first multifamily effort in this particular neighborhood in a very, very, very long time. And it is so needed in the William White neighborhood and the Dufferin neighborhood, where we need renewal. Because as you all know, the houses are old, they're burning, it's not worth the cost to renovate them anymore. And so I'm glad that this is the first one in this particular neighborhood moving ahead. So I just want to express my gratitude to the developer for moving forward with this project. And yeah, that's it. It's a great thing. I can't believe it. Right on.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands to close.
Yes, I want to concur with my colleague and really extend the thanks to our planner, Simi Jerez. Really excited to pass this RMFL on at McGregor and Pritchard, and I share the enthusiasm of Councillor Eadie, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll call the question on item 12. All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Item 13, Madam Clerk, Councillor Wyatt, you wish to speak? You're declaring conflict on this item. We'll leave the chamber. Thank you.
Do you want to do both?
Yeah, it's item 13 and 16, so I'll note that so we can deal with both items while he's out of the chamber. Madam Clerk.
Item number 13, zoning agreement amendment, 1021 and 1029 Court Avenue, ZAA 1 of 2024.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Councillor Rowlands.
So moved, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Any further speakers on 13? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Madam Clerk, item 16.
Item number 16, rezoning 744 St. Mary's Road, DAZ 200 of 2024.
Councillor Rowlands.
So moved, Madam Speaker.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? That's carried. Okay. Item 19. Madam Clerk.
Item number 19, rezoning 1131 Nairn Avenue, DAZ 224 of 2023.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands.
So moved, Madam Speaker. I can introduce it if you'd like.
Okay. Any further speakers on 19? Councillor Schreier.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to stand this down to make a few comments on what was being resolved last week at Community Committee regarding a brand-new building. It will be the tallest building in East Elmwood, I believe, certainly in that section. There's 6-story, moved to a mixed-use, multifamily use, 6-story building at 1131 Nairn, at the corner of Nairn and Stapleton, the northeast corner. It is good for our community. We need more housing. It is essentially in the right place and very close to amenities, Kildonan Place, etc. We did have a notable discussion during the process of the community committee to tweak it to see what we could do to optimize the circumstances. I'm pleased with the support from my fellow councillors, Councillor Wyatt and Councillor Brawadi, and specifically mentioning in the process we've tweaked the roof in the process of dealing with the developer through landmark planning and design to optimize sunlight on the west side of Stapleton for the long-term residents and taxpayers that have been living there for decades on that side to optimize the shape and primarily the roof. And we've got also, which is on record, Councillor Brawadi's assurance that in the planning approval at the upcoming community committee that he's going to the process will necessitate tweaking the roof to optimize a few dozen extra hours of sunlight for those people living on Stapleton. Grateful for the support of my fellow councillors and for Councillor Brawadi's statement on that, and look forward to this development for East Elmwood, for our residents, for our future residents, and the business that it'll bring to East Elmwood. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rollins to close.
Sure. What once was commercial only is now mixed use residential. How wonderful. Let's keep going on building housing for Winnipeggers, Madam Speaker.
All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Okay, next we'll get into...
Let's get into bylaws, Madam Speaker. Want to?
Pardon me? Yeah, we'll do, yeah,
there
we do
motions?
have a
Oh, we have
motion
motions,
first,
yeah.
yes. That's what I'm just getting here. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Motion 2 is moved by Councillor Mays, seconded by Councillor Dobson. And the topic is amendments to the Development Procedures Bylaw. And this will be an automatic referral to the Standing Committee. And now bylaws, Madam Clerk. Madam Chair.
I actually thought there was another motion for my committee, Madam Speaker, but I could be wrong.
No.
Okay.
Councillor
Then I'll
Wyatt?
move.
My apologies, Madam Chair, I have to declare a conflict on bylaw number 82 of 2023.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that momentarily if you want to stay at the
Yeah.
moment. Yeah. Councillor Rollins.
Okay. I move that the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 54, 2024, bylaw number 55, 2024, and bylaw number 56, 2024.
All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Okay.
Bylaw number 54 of 2024,
Now you
bylaw
can
number
move on.
55 of 2024, and bylaw number 56 of
Yeah.
2024.
Unless you want me to actually go stay, and I'll exclude
Okay.
it.
Councillor Wyatt,
Let's do, it was on bylaw 82.
if you can just
Yeah, just
stay
do-
back, just deal with the 82,
Yeah.
that's right. And come back, Councillor Wyatt, and
Yeah, so
very shortly.
we're good? I'll move
Yes.
that the following bylaw be read a second time, bylaw number 82, 2023.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 82 of 2023.
And then if I can just move, Madam Speaker, that bylaw number 82, 2023 be read a third time and that same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Now we'll invite him in.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. He needs his ice skates on coming back and forth. Jersey on. Councillor Rollins.
Yes. I move that the following bylaws be read a second time. Bylaw number 81, 2023, bylaw number 86, 2023, bylaw number 17, 2024, bylaw number 27,
All in
2024.
favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 81 of 2023, bylaw number 86 of 2023, bylaw number 17 of 2024, bylaw number 27 of 2024.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
I move that bylaw number 81, 2023, bylaw 86, 2023, 17, 2024, and 17, 2024, and 27, 2024 be read a third time and the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed, Madam Speaker.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I move the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw 57, 2024, bylaw 58, 2024, bylaw 59, 2024.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 57 of 2024, bylaw number 58 of 2024, and bylaw 59 of 2024.
I move that bylaws numbered 57, 2024 to 59, 2024, both inclusive, be read a second time.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaws numbered 57 of 2024 to 59 of 2024, both inclusive.
I move that the rule be suspended and bylaws numbered 57, 2024 to 59, 2024, both inclusive, be read a third time and the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed, Madam Speaker.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried. We'll now have question period. Councillor Wyatt.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to the Chair of Property and Development. I just want to rise to take this opportunity
I know I have to pose a question, but I'll preface the question by saying thank you for the hearing the other day on the 22nd, the Monday, pertaining to 24-290 Shady Shore Drive West, Mr. Grant Weber. And I know I have to ask questions. So first of all, thank you for yourself, for your work that you did on that matter, Madam Chair, as well as the members of the committee. I know Mr. Weber was grateful. And maybe as the question is next steps on that matter, since I have to ask a question, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rollins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the question with respect to being able to speak to permits. Oftentimes, we don't speak at all, as we don't with respect to public hearing matters, Madam Speaker. But in public hearings and in matters pertaining to the permit office, it is the case that I, along with this council, want to see improvements. And it was a very good piece of casework that Councillor Wyatt brought forward with a resident who had concerns. Over $1,700 in related permits and appeals of the permit were heard by the committee, and some very key process concerns that were heard by committee. In the public hearing, Councillor Wyatt was a protective ward councillor, Madam Speaker, and his ward resident, Mr. Weber, who, matter of public record, had some deep troubles with the department in issuing a permit for a backyard deck. It is the season for backyard decks, Madam Speaker, and so while this council can feel somewhat proud that we did a goodly amount of red tape reduction with respect to what I call backyard fun, the common permits that we ask residents to get on fences and pools and hot tubs and gazebos and more. It's with some seriousness that a constituent of Councillor Wyatt's had some trouble. And it's worth putting some words on the record because residents can come forward and appeal, but it does come at a cost to them, both time-consuming and a cost, Madam Speaker. And so as a committee, the appeal committee decided to reduce the fees associated with that permit to zero because of what we saw in terms of confusion, in terms of varying prices for permits, Madam Speaker. So I think it's always important to, number one, talk to the public service that you need to, and there is a phone number for permits. I think it's 5140-986, 5140. But it's also sometimes important that when you're having conflicts with the city, that you involve you make use of the conflict resolution system that you have, but occasionally it's really great to reach out to your ward councillor. And in this case, Councillor Wyatt deserves some praise for being that protective ward voice and supporting his residents in a public hearing. And while we listened with an open mind to both the public service as well as the resident in public hearings, you know, Madam Speaker, it was an interesting case, and I would encourage all of council to review it and to see somewhat of my ambitions as Chair of Property and Development and the work ahead for us as council to clarify, make it easier, and have some, you know, really good information to provide residents on permitting that is clear, that is consistent, and really gets projects out and working and projects permitted. So if you read it, it acts in some way like a deterrent, and we don't want that as a city. We want permitted work. So it was important mirror to hold up to me as chair, Madam Speaker, and important mirror, I think, to hold up. And I do have my work cut out for me as Chair of Property and Development as it pertains to the ease in which the permitting office services Winnipeggers and anyone who comes to develop. And that was very good. At the end of the day, it was just very good City Council work by Councillor Wyatt, Madam Speaker. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you. Any further questions for our chair? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the Standing Policy Committee on Water and Waste and the Environment. Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll introduce the report and move adoption of the consent agenda item 1.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Okay, we have no bylaws, no motions. Any questions for our chair for Councillor Mays? No questions. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services. Our chair, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much. A few reports to go through. We'll start with report of March 6, 2024. I'd like to introduce item number 3 of the report and move for adoption and consent agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Next, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Reports of March 11th. I'd like to move for adoption and consent agenda of item number 1.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Final report.
Report of April 10th. 2 items here. I'd like to move for adoption and consent agenda of items 1 and 2.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? That's carried. Question period under this committee. Any questions for Councillor Duncan? Okay, seeing none. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Public Works. Councillor Lukes, our chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would like to move for the April 9th meeting, items 1 through 5, consent agenda.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, number 3 is pulled. Okay, I'll call the question on 1, 2, 4, and 5. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? That's carried.
Opposition to the Winnipeg Parking Authority business plan.
Noted. That's item 2. Item 2, 2 councillors noted in opposition. Madam Clerk, item 3.
Item number 3, speed limit increase on Reinders Drive and installation of rectangular rapid flashing beacon crossing on Transcona Boulevard in the Transcona Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Lukes, our chair, to introduce the item.
Sure, I'll listen to what my colleague has to say.
Councillor Brawadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, I'm just surprised to see this here, and the recommendation is to refer it back to the public service. This was a request from the East Kildonan Transcona Community Committee. The advice of our professional public service was to increase the speed limit on Reinders Drive. So I'm just really curious. I apologize I didn't bring this up at EPC or even earlier. Not sure why this would not be going forward. Reinders is a 4-lane divided roadway with very limited driveways on the north side. I would say the average speed based on what I witness down that street regularly is well above 60 kilometers an hour even, so I do believe that, the percentiles and all that makes sense for it to be 60. So I'm just curious as to why we're playing politics with speed limits when this ability was moved from the province to us. This is what I feared, and it's coming to fruition here, so I'm just curious to hear what happened.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I could shed some light on that question. Councillor Body, just to, I believe I was the one who initiated the process to have the speed limit increased. And the reason that, we were assured by the public service that he can get back to us in short order, was the confusion that could be potentially caused. And I was able to chat with Mr. Patman about this, about the 170 meters east of the eastern boundary of La Jumodier, that's where the speed limit. And if you actually go and look at that location, there's a nice little off-ramp or an approach going into the loading dock of the taxation data center, nicely forested, that could easily be a speed trap. And my concern is the confusion. I think it's simpler just to have the speed limit from the intersection of La Jumodier to Peguis, and rather than this kind of transition. And so that's why, and they felt it makes sense. They're going to look at it again and bring it back. And that was really the main reason that part of the report should be. That's the only section of the report that should be going back. Actually, the parts 2, 3 are going forward as it stands, the way I read it right now. But maybe the speaker can. And that's regarding the rectangular flashing lights on Transcona Boulevard at that crosswalk there. So.
Good. Councillor Lukes to close.
I think that answers Councillor Brody's question, so that's all I have to say.
Okay. Call the question on item 3. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. We have a notice of motion that's been circulated, moved by Councillor Wyatt, seconded by Councillor Schreier. It's regarding portable asphalt equipment. It'll be a notice of motion appearing on our next agenda, May 30th. We'll now move into bylaws. Councillor Lukes.
Okay. I'd like to move that the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 4724, 4824, and 4924.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.
I'd like to move the bylaws numbered 4724 and 4924, both inclusive, be read a second time.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.
And I'd like to move that the rule be suspended and the bylaws numbered 4724 to 4924, both inclusive, be read a third time, and that same be passed and ordered to be signed and sealed.
Mr. Clerk, that
Yep.
was the,
Yeah, we missed the reading
That
of the bylaws by the clerk there.
yes, we missed a section. Yeah.
Sorry.
So for the first time, that bylaw number 47 of 2024, bylaw number 48 of 2024, and bylaw number 49 of 2024. And then for the second time, bylaws number 47 of 2024 to 49 of 2024, both inclusive.
Thank you. That concludes. Thank you, Councillor Lukes. Any questions for our Chair of Public Works? All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Councillor Eady, question for Councillor Lukes? No? Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Speaker, to Councillor Lukes. Well over 200 days ago, Councillor Lukes and I authored a motion to have the public service look at a pedestrian prioritized pilot for Osborne Village. There were two components with respect to the pedestrian prioritized pilot, a slip lane and a scramble crossing that we wanted the public service to look at. What resulted this month at the Standing Policy Committee was neither looking at a scramble crossing nor looking at the elimination of the slip lane. But my first question, Madam Speaker, is why not the council-directed motion to the Standing Policy Committee to look at a pedestrian prioritized pilot for Osborne Village?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes.
Right. All right. So I'll address the slip lane first. In our discussions, we had quite a lively discussion period over the slip lane in Osborne Village. I want to thank Councillor Wyatt for coming forward and giving us a bit of history on the quite involved discussion that occurred when the Safeway at that complex went in, and how Councillor Gerbasi at the time was very concerned about pedestrian accessibility, vehicular accessibility, and safety. And that, I believe, I looked it up, it was 10 years ago, I think. No, maybe a little longer than that. I looked it up. Anyways, what was decided on the slip lane is, for now, not to proceed because we're going to wait till the bike lane. There's a bike lane that's going in, there's construction that's occurring, and there are some adjustments being laid to the curbs and the slip lane. So we thought, the bike lane project's underway, construction's occurring, let's deal with the slip lane and look at it and see how the bike lane functions with all of that. Transit also came forward and it had some incredibly valid points about them having priority signalization requirements in that area, and that they really needed to have folks on that island for the flowing of transit and the priority signalization. Because if the slip lane changed and the dynamics of that intersection changed, then the priority signalization wouldn't work, and it just was a domino effect. So I'm actually very pleased to say that all of the committee unanimously supported the studying of a scramble. Now, the public service suggested what they do is, which we supported too, and I don't know if we suggested it or they suggested it in retrospect, but we wanted to look at a few sites in Winnipeg for a scramble, Osborne being one of them. So that is being studied for a scramble along with other areas. The department will come back and tell us this is good and bad about this intersection, good and bad about that intersection, good and bad about Osborne. So it may not have come across clear, but we're studying multiple intersections for a scramble, including the Osborne and River intersection.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland, second question.
So, Madam Speaker, the scramble was supported. Can Councillor Lukes explain why, when a pedestrian prioritized pilot was requested by council, why she feels that with respect to a council-directed motion, that now studying it in one, if not many areas, is in following and keeping with council direction when council's recommendation was a pedestrian prioritized pilot for Osborne Village?
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Lukes.
Well, I guess it's the committee's interpretation, and I felt it even more positive that we were going to be studying others. So we are studying a project in Osborne Village at River and Osborne. It is being studied along with others. As a big advocate of active transportation and looking at other intersections and maybe having the possibility of a couple scrambles, I felt why not? The committee thought why not? So the Osborne and River one is being studied, and other ones are being studied. The department supported that. We all supported that. I don't know if there's any other intersections in the city of Winnipeg that have more population coming back and forth. We did comment, or pedestrians, we did comment that we would like to have seen some pedestrian numbers, which they will come back with in their next report. But the other thing I want to mention is, what we did discuss in quite a bit of detail about a pedestrian scramble is, the city of Winnipeg has never done one, so there's a lot of things to take into consideration. To change the infrastructure at an intersection is costly. It simply can't be done in 30, 60, 90 days. They have to look at it. They have to look at the synchronization of the lights throughout the area, because when you change the synchronization at an intersection, it's a domino effect elsewhere. You also have to take into consideration accessibility and the curb cuts and access points for a scramble. It's not just the 90-degree curb cuts for the sidewalk. So I don't know. I'm happy they're studying it, and I'm thrilled they're studying a couple others.
Thank you. Final question, Councillor Rowlands.
Will Councillor Lukes commit to relook at the issue of the slip lane following the bike lane construction this summer? The BIZ zone and following the bike lane construction, it took 180 days to not come up with a pedestrian prioritized pilot. So will she also commit to meeting with the BIZ zone and letting them know she's relooking at the issue of the slip lane, the sequence and the timing, Madam Speaker?
There's lots of questions. Okay, Councillor.
Well, it is on the record that we will be looking at the slip lane after the bike lane goes in. We didn't write it into a motion or anything, which maybe we should have, but it's definitely on the record. We definitely discussed this, that once the infrastructure goes in for the bike lane, we'll see how it unfolds, and we'll look at it again. It was a very dynamic meeting. Some of you may recall if you watched it. You may have missed that. It's understandable. But that's what we said.
Thank you.
No, it was dynamic. We used the gavel 6 times, so I don't do that often. So,
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt, followed by Councillor Eady.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the chair acknowledge?
Councillor Wyatt, question to Councillor Lukes.
Via yourself to Councillor Lukes, will the Chair of Public Works acknowledge that often there's many comparisons made to Winnipeg to other cities when it comes to the on-street bike paths that are being created, taking lanes away from vehicles, comparisons to Calgary, Ottawa, Edmonton. However, Calgary has an extensive LRT system throughout their city. Ottawa has an extensive BRT system with dedicated corridors and now LRT and subway in their city. Edmonton has LRT lines throughout their city. Vancouver has extensive SkyTrain lines throughout the city. Winnipeg has none of it. Other than one BRT line to the U of M, we have, what do we have? We have our regional streets. That's our main corridors. That's how we move people, both on buses and on trucks for goods and people. And that would you acknowledge that we're trying to do everything with one transportation network, with a growing city, with growing demand and congestion and demand for the use of our regional streets, and that there is a frustration out there, a general frustration. Would you acknowledge that frustration by many citizens of Winnipeg who are getting frustrated by a policy of taking lanes away for one group and affecting all these other individuals, including transportation of goods and services that need these regional streets? Will you acknowledge this frustration exists?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes.
I will acknowledge what I've been hearing a lot on my phone lately, and what I will acknowledge is residents are frustrated far, far more than bike lanes about the potholes. And I got an answer for you on that. So, honestly, 1 or 2, if that, emails that I get. Maybe I'll get inundated, but I'm not hearing it.
Second question.
Well, I did. But anyway, and my second question is related to the potholes, because like other members of council, we've been getting calls. And could you tell us what's happening in terms of that with Public Works? I've been playing phone tag with the director, and I almost took my front end off of my truck the other day. So could the councillor just elaborate on what's happening with regards to that?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes.
I would love to, and I would love to ask Madam Speaker for support from our council colleagues on this. So, as you know, and I sent an update out, I believe, of what's going on with the pothole season. We've got 10 to 14 crews out filling potholes. But here's the scenario. Many, many, many of our streets are old. Many of our streets are in bad condition. So when you're filling a pothole on an old street, it's like filling a cavity in a rotten tooth. So, well, I mean, it really is, right? Now, the other thing I'd like to suggest is, and make you aware of it, I think you are, you know, we've heard a lot about the New Deal, but I would like to articulate, and this isn't Janice making it up, this is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Out of every one tax dollar that we spend, that you spend, that we all spend in taxes, 10 cents comes to the city, 40 cents goes to the province, and 50 cents goes to the federal government. So we have this 10 cents that we are using to deliver services, to build fire halls, to build rec campuses, to try and allow people to flush the toilet and have sewer capacity, and to patch our roads. And it's just not cutting it. So I throw out the offer, as has Chris Lawrence, as has former Mayor Glenn Murray, as has former Mayor Brian Bowman, and current Mayor Gillingham, saying, look, this funding model doesn't work. We're going to have potholes forever in perpetuity. People have asked me, when does pothole season end? It doesn't end. It goes on and on and on because we're filling a rotten tooth. So I encourage you all to speak to your provincial and federal representatives and in a very nice manner, in the right timing, to really, really encourage a new funding alignment.
Thank you. Final question, Councillor Wyatt.
It's more the British North American Act and the Constitution that we got to be brought into, and then we'll get reformed. But anyway, to your point, is it possible for Public Works to at least, in light of the fact that we got crews, but we don't have, probably enough to cover all the potholes right away, could at least somebody go around and mark and barricade the ones that are dangerous until they can be repaired? Based on the calls, and they would have these based on the 311 calls. Is that something that could be referred to the director to consider, please?
So I hear you. I'm going to make the analogy, in South Winnipeg, we have a lot of geese crossing the road. We've seen really, really horrific collisions and results of that when people stop to let the goose cross the road. So I'm envisioning a barricade on Kenaston, and another barricade on Kenaston, and another barricade on Kenaston. And I really don't think that's a good thing, but I will take it back to the department and ask.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Schreier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is Councillor Luke saying that our ability to fill potholes is getting worse?
No, I think our ability to fill potholes is stellar. I think the challenge is we have hundreds and hundreds, I don't think, I know, we have hundreds and hundreds of potholes, and back to the filling analogy. Just because we fill it doesn't mean it's going to stay. A little shift in weather, hot day, cold day, rain, water, pop, out comes the filling. So then we're back 2 weeks later at that same pothole, filling it again.
Thank you. Second question, Councillor Schreier.
Okay, so just so we're on the same page, we're back filling them again because we're not doing as good of a job at filling these potholes. I don't mean to be trite about this, just so we're all on the same page on this.
Thank you. Councillor Lukes.
Certainly. So I'll just make an analogy here. I'm working on a project with Councillor Gilroy in her ward. We were on Wolseley on the weekend. We had a wonderful discussion. So then I proceeded to get in my vehicle because I had to go to Roblin Boulevard. So I drove down one of the streets in Wolseley. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. When you have a street that's, I'm going to say, 50 years old, that's full of patches already, and you're patching the patches, it just really doesn't last. It's like, again, taking a really nice filling and putting it in a rotten tooth, and then the tooth you eat, a piece of candy, and a part of your tooth falls off, and then the filling falls out. Like, it's really difficult to fill broken things. And we have a broken road, an old road, and we're trying to fill it. I don't know, are you sort of getting the analogy here?
Band-Aid solution. Thank you. Councillor Schreier, final question.
Oh, thank you. So are we saying our ability to renew our roads is getting
Our
harder?
question period has actually ended.
Extension?
Extension of time. Councillor Eadie will be our last speaker. 2 minutes. Councillor, 2 minutes. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Noted.
Madam Speaker, may I repeat my question? I'm sure if it was heard.
Yes.
Sure. So are we saying our ability to renew our streets so that we're not constantly rebandaging our streets? Is our ability to renew our streets getting harder?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes.
100% our ability to renew our streets is getting worse because that 10 cents on the dollar that we're getting is going to sewer capacity, building fire halls, building rec campuses. It's going to fixing other old infrastructure. It goes back to the 10 cents on the dollar. We're a growing city, and all of this housing and growth is great, but we can barely keep up with what we have. So yes, our ability to repair roads is going downhill.
Thank you. Councillor Eadie.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. It's I guess a do you know, because I know that the chairperson, and this is for all my colleagues on council, when it comes to establishing a new type of intersection called a scramble intersection, it's taken probably 50 years for people who are blind to figure out how to cross Osborne and River at the moment. So I just want to let my council colleagues know that we need to actually have a public consultation with persons with disabilities about what they're going to do to make it a scramble intersection, because people who are blind are still going to cross at 90 degrees. We are not going to cross diagonally, and if they open up the curb cuts that are even wider, how is somebody who's blind going to know whether they landed on the sidewalk or walking down the bike path? That was a mistaken error that they made when they redid the Queen Elizabeth, and they put a cycle trail over it, and I got yelled at because there was no way of me knowing whether I was on a sidewalk or a bike path. And the bike cyclists come yelling at me. I was on my way to go rowing at the Winnipeg Rowing Club on Lindale Drive, and they're yelling at me. So please, let's not move too fast on going with scramble intersection until we've had a universal design look at what's going to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Schreier moves extension of 2 minutes. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Councillor Lukes, answer the question, please. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor Eadie. This was a discussion, or this was a consideration also, and that's another reason why we can't do something like this in 90 days or 30 or 20 or however many days. We need to do public consultation on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
One last question. Madam Speaker, I'm not sure if the chairperson is aware of this, but I heard some comments. You know, I have an incident, or potholes that aren't in the path of cars necessarily are used by cyclists, and cyclists get injured through potholes, and their bikes get wrecked by potholes as well. So every pothole needs to be filled when they're there to fill a pothole. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Lukes?
Just respond to that. Mr. Cantor and I, the road maintenance oversight person, Mr. Cantor and I had a good discussion about this, and he assured me that they would be also prioritizing for the vulnerable road user the potholes in the bike lanes and the potholes in the bike corridor on roads that don't have protected lanes. He also, and I saw it for a fact, and actually I've received more emails on that than the confusion with bike lanes and vehicles. I've received many emails from the cycling community thanking us for being proactive on sweeping the bike lanes this year, because we've all really stressed, and I have stressed to the department, to prioritize the vulnerable road user first.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers moves adjournment.
I so moved.
All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Please stay for roll call. Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Rawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Eadie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Rollins, Santos, Schreier, and Wyatt.
Meeting adjourned.